Chapter 436. By allowing the souls to attach themselves to the puppets, they would be able to control the puppets that were possessed by the souls to fight. This was Bikesro's spell, star map magic. Noah did not know if the soul attached to the puppet by Picasso's star atlas magic was his own or someone else's. Perhaps it was stolen from some creature, or even created out of thin air with magic, but the soul attached to the puppet seemed to be able to sense the direction of its master. Noah also didn't know if Bikesro was controlling the puppets from a distance, or if the soul in the puppets had an instinct to find its master. In short, after Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha left with Laxes and freed, Noah let go of the puppet in his hand. The puppet seemed to have a life of its own as it floated into the air. The pair of eyes of the puppet that could only be used for decoration suddenly lit up and made a mechanical sound. After hovering in the air for a while, it suddenly flew in a certain direction. At the same time, the space behind Noah suddenly shook. Accompanied by the sound of vibrations in the air, a surge of blue flames suddenly ignited and covered Noah's back. It transformed into a magician who had released his death feather form and spewed out a large amount of black light. With this push, Noah flew into the sky and followed behind the puppet. Under the puppet's lead, he flew in a certain direction. Beep, beep, beep. With this kind of mimicry, the doll was like a real robot. It spun and flew forward. Noah, who was following behind the puppet, stared at the puppet while observing the surroundings. He found that he was moving towards another of the hills around Magnolia. It seems that the enemy chose this hill as well, just like Raxus. Seeing the puppet that was flying forward suddenly dive down for no reason and land on one of the endless hills below, Noah came to this conclusion. Although he didn't know if he could find Naz, Gray, Lucy, and the others, he was certain that Bikesro was now on this hill. After Alusha defeated Raytheon, Raytheon was attacked. Although Freed had arrived at Noah and Rax's location with great difficulty despite being seriously injured. Judging from the fact that the attackers couldn't catch up to Freed, it shouldn't have been too long even if Bikesro and Epigran risked their lives to protect him. That was why Noah originally thought that the enemy couldn't move far. But now it seemed that he was just lucky. In this world where even magic was used in daily life, nothing was impossible. Noah once again understood this fact. However, even so, the attacker didn't seem to be far away. At least, Bikesro's position wasn't far away. Thus, under the lead of the wooden puppet, Noah descended to the bottom of the hill. Whoosh! At this moment, a sharp sound broke through the air. Noah stopped abruptly and retreated in an instant. Amidst the piercing sound of something breaking through the air, a round black shadow shot out from below, piercing through the air and landing on top of the wooden doll. Bang! The wooden doll was instantly blasted apart, scattering into pieces that filled the air. Only then did Noah clearly see the body of the round shadow that was attacking him. It was actually a crystal ball. Noah's eyes suddenly focused while retreating. An attack launched with a crystal ball? Noah had only encountered this attack method not long ago. Moreover, so far, Noah had only encountered one person who used this attack method. Future reveal. The next moment, a delicate voice echoed in the air. The crystal ball that blasted the puppet suddenly trembled and split into dozens of identical crystal balls. They hovered in the air for a while, and immediately, like raindrops, they fell from the sky and shot toward Noah's direction. The attack method finally allowed Noah to confirm who he encountered. His heart settled, and he reached out his hand. Snap! He snapped his fingers. Kacha kacha! In the wings that formed the death feather of the magician, a mechanical sound was heard. The black steel wing-shaped floating cannons split out from the wings behind Noah's back. In the blink of an eye, they split into dozens of floating cannons and floated around Noah's body. The next moment, energy visible to the naked eye gathered at the front of the floating cannons, and then it exploded, turning into a laser beam. It rushed into the sky, rubbed against the air, and fell one by one on the attacking crystal balls. Pung 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 pung. In the continuous sound of explosions, the crystal balls were blasted by the laser beam one after another, stirring up bursts of smoke and fire. It was like fireworks, constantly exploding in the air. At the same time, Noah suddenly waved his hand, and a floating cannon immediately moved in front of him. It pointed at a corner of the hill below and gathered energy. A small laser beam burst out and fell down. Bang! In the corner of the hill below, a rock was blasted by the laser beam, and the gravel flew in all directions like a bullet. However, Noah's target was not the rock, but the moment the rock was blasted, a figure jumped out from behind the rock. The figure landed on the rocky ground at the top of the hill below. Looking at the black figure, Noah sneered. "It's really you, Urusha?" Yes. The person who came was the former counselor of the council. She had been pretending to be Jalal's ghost for 8 years, brainwashing Jalal, and indirectly causing Alusha to have an unbearable past. Holding a crystal ball in her hand, Urusha raised her head and looked at Noah, who was floating in the air, and smiled sweetly. "Sir Noah, we meet again. Last time at the Paradise Tower, you used some tricks to escape, and now you dare to show up in front of me?" Noah glanced down with a cold gaze. The floating cannons around him were suddenly aimed at Urusha. "I have to say, you're quite brave, Urusha." As soon as he finished speaking, the familiar energy turned into light and condensed at the front of the floating cannons. "Sir, it's better if you don't act rashly." Facing the floating cannons that could shoot laser beams, Urusha, who had just witnessed the power of the laser beam, calmly raised the crystal ball. "Otherwise, something that you'll regret will happen later." With such a sentence, the crystal ball in Urusha's hand lit up, and figures suddenly appeared around her. The energy gathered at the front of the floating cannons suddenly condensed, and a fierce light flashed in Noah's eyes. It was because the figures that suddenly appeared were all the companions of the fairy tale that Noah was looking for. At this moment, all the fairy tale sorcerers, including Bikeslow, Abba and Jerlin, had fallen on the ground as if they had lost consciousness. Even Naz, Gray, Lucy and even Hobby were there. Seeing this scene, Noah first confirmed the number of people. After confirming that all the missing people were present, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. His cold gaze was cast on Urusha, and there was a real murderous intent in his eyes. As expected of the person who has been pretending to be a ghost for the past 8 years. "I should have known that you would be the one who would do such a sneaky thing. You've wronged me this time." Despite saying so, Urusha still had a sweet smile on her face. "To capture so many people, it would be very difficult for me to do it alone in less than 2 days. I wasn't the one who did it. I only offered up this plan when that lord asked if there was any way to lure you out." That lord? Noah couldn't help but be startled. Then his expression suddenly changed, and he abruptly raised his head to look at the sky. There, a huge floating magic airship was slowly descending, as if it had stopped on a huge magic array. At this moment, a whip shadow suddenly descended from the magic airship, like a meteor falling from the sky. Amidst the sound of breaking air, it fell on Noah's body. Chapter 437. Amidst such a sharp sound, the whip shadow that descended from the magic airship hovering in the sky was as fast as lightning. The moment Noah raised his head, the whip shadow suddenly fell in a strange arc like a venomous snake. It was so fast that it was comparable to a bullet. Noah's attention was attracted by Urudia and his companions in the fairy tale guild. Although he used his sensing ability to detect the magic airship and the snake-like whip shadow falling from the sky in time, it was still a little hasty. Moreover, the whip shadow's speed was too fast. Noah could only desperately urge the death feather form of the magician. Bang! A large amount of black light gushed out from the tip of the pitch-black wings like a flood, and turned into a violent thrust, causing Noah's body to suddenly move a step to the side. This step allowed Noah to avoid the whip shadow that was about to strike him, and it was about to land on his head. However, after Noah moved a step to the side, the snake-like whip shadow fell in the position where Noah was a second ago. It did not directly hit Noah, but it still wrapped around one of Noah's arms. Only then did Noah clearly see what the whip shadow was. It was actually a chain completely composed of magic power. Pa! In the next moment, the magic power chain wrapped around Noah's arm suddenly tightened with a crisp sound. It stretched perfectly straight and rapidly retracted in its original direction. Noah only felt that the magic power chain wrapped around his arm suddenly exerted a force and pulled him over. Suddenly, the magic power chain forcibly pulled Noah in the direction of the magic airship. Whoosh! While his body was being pulled upwards, Noah heard a sharp sound of wind in his ears, telling him how fast he was flying upwards. In the blink of an eye, the magic power chain pulled Noah past the magic airship's position. Like flying a kite, the other end of the chain seemed to be fixed on the airship and threw Noah into the air. Noah's heart trembled, and his expression turned cold. The magic power in his body flowed like a stream toward Noah's arm, turning into a gorgeous white light that covered the magic power chain. Bang! With a muffled sound, the magic power chain suddenly exploded, allowing Noah's body to regain its freedom. He controlled the death feather on his back to spray out a large amount of black light, propelling his body. With a rotation, he shot forward instead of retreating, shooting in the direction of the magic airship, and landed on the top of the airship. What was the feeling of standing on an airplane? Noah had never tried it before, so he didn't know what it was like. However, in the world of the Dark Bullet, in order to destroy Scorpio, Noah had also stood on the top of a military helicopter. That feeling was probably similar to what he was feeling now, right? Against the strong wind, Noah stood on the top of the magic airship and slowly raised his head to look in front of him. In the direction of Noah's gaze, there was a person, a tall figure, wearing demon-like armor, a helmet on his head, and a cape on his back. His white beard reached below his chest, and one of his eyes was covered with a black eye patch. His gaze was very fierce, and he looked to be at least 70 or 80 years old. Although he appeared to be an old man in his 70s or 80s, his back was extremely straight. One of his hands was extended forward, and a magic array rotated in front of his palm. This magic array was connected to a chain of mana, and the chain was slowly retracting. Obviously, the person who suddenly attacked Noah was this person in front of him. Oh! The old man wearing the demon-like double-horned helmet retracted the chain, while looking at Noah in surprise. You actually managed to shatter my magic. You seem to possess a rather interesting magic, brat. Noah stared at the calm old man in front of him. His eyes gradually flickered, and there was a faint trace of seriousness. From this old man, Noah felt a familiar magic power. Strange evil magic power. It was exactly the same as the magic power in Lucy's room. No, under Noah's excellent perception ability, the magic power that pervaded from this person was much stronger than the magic residue left in Lucy's room. It was also much more evil and dark. This old man is not simple. Although the situation just now was indeed quite rushed, and there was suspicion of a sneak attack in it, but Noah could still let the magic power chain catch Noah's arm with his superb perception ability, which was enough to prove that this old man was not simple. Noah's intuition told him. The old man in front of him was very strong. Stronger than Makarov, Laxas, Kildas, Joseph and Jalal. And a lot stronger. If he did not raise his vigilance, once the battle started, even Noah was afraid that if he was not careful, he would fall. Under such intuition, Noah's body tensed up for the first time since the last battle with Bio. His gaze fell on the old man like an arrow. Who are you? Hearing this sentence, the old man laughed. His laughter was unusually creepy. It really makes people sigh at the mercilessness of time. I didn't expect that there would be a time when I would be asked about my identity by the people of Fairy Tale. Hearing this, Noah frowned. What did this sentence mean? Could it be that the members of Fairy Tale had to know him? You can call me Hades. The old man who called himself Hades looked at Noah and introduced himself. The leader of the Dark Guild Grimoire Heart. Hades. Dark Guild Grimoire Heart? Noah was surprised. Baram Alliance's Grimoire Heart? Baram Alliance. In the dark of the magic world, it could be said to be an alliance formed by the three strongest dark guilds that controlled the entire dark world. One of them was Grimoire Heart. Moreover, Grimoire Heart was said to be the strongest among the three dark guilds in the Baram Alliance. In other words, the person who called himself Hades, standing in front of Noah, was the leader of the strongest dark guild in the magic world. That Grimoire Heart actually came to Magnolia, and even captured the people of Fairy Tale? After understanding what kind of enemy he was facing, Noah became more dignified. He didn't expect that the disbandment of the council would allow this number one dark guild to be so brazen as to move around a big city with people. I heard from Erudia that there's a very impressive brat in Fairy Tale. Coincidentally, the council has been disbanded recently, so I have less to worry about. That's why I came here personally to take a look. Hades was still sizing up Noah as he exclaimed in admiration. What an amazing magic power. Just from magic power alone, you are more outstanding than anyone I have ever seen in my life. I even doubted if the legendary dark mage Jerf had magic power at your level. I originally thought that there was no need to use such a troublesome method to lure you out. I even thought that I might as well kill my way into Magnolia. But now, it seems that you have the qualifications to make me waste my effort. Lure me out. Noah looked straight at Hades and slightly moved his palms, as if he was ready to clench his fist at any time. In other words, you kidnapped my companions one by one, and your target was me? After all, you came from that important guild. Even Erudia especially reported it to me, so I was more or less concerned. Since the council was disbanded, I came to take a look. It seems that this trip was worth it. Hades said this sentence, as if it was a matter of fact. Hey little devil, do you want to join my guild and explore the truth of the path of demons with me? Hades actually had the heart to cherish talent. However, Noah slightly raised his eyes and sneered. Recruit? You actually want to recruit me after touching my family and companions? Violent magic power rose from Noah's body. Dream on. Chapter 438. It was as though the surrounding space had suddenly vibrated. The violent mana that caused the atmosphere to shriek was like monstrous waves that surged from Noah's relatively small body. It turned into a substantial impact that shook the surroundings like a storm. If someone were to look at the magic airship hovering in midair from the ground, they would see it. At this moment, at the top of the magic airship, a whirlpool-like wind was expanding in all directions with terrifying power, causing the magic airship to shake and almost lose its balance. Feeling the boundless and terrifying mana coming from Noah, Hades was secretly shocked. As the leader of the strongest dark guild, Grimoire Heart, Hades, who had a lot of encounters in the past, had long seen all kinds of strange things in the magic world. Originally, Hades thought that apart from the legendary Jerv, there shouldn't be anything in this world that could surprise him. But now, a brat who wasn't even 20 years old had made Hades break his self-awareness in less than 3 minutes after meeting him. Not only was Hades not angry, but he was also pleasantly surprised. The potential you have is much more terrifying than I imagined. If you were given time to grow, I wouldn't doubt that you could become the second Jerv. You've really opened my eyes. Saying that, Hades' face suddenly turned sullen. But when I think of how such a person is still in Fairy Tale, my rebellious heart cries. As soon as he finished speaking, Hades' eyes suddenly became extremely fierce. He glanced at Noah and stretched out his hand. A magic array suddenly fluctuated in front of his palm. It rotated slightly, and at the center of it, a chain made of rhombus-shaped magic light sheets suddenly shot out. The chain turned into a black shadow and shot toward Noah from the front. The clanging sound of the chain colliding was like the sound of a death knell, and it swept toward Noah as if it was seeking his life. Its speed was as fast as before. Even the 10 great saint magicians might not be able to react in time. However, this time Noah, who was on guard, saw the magic chain suddenly shoot toward him. The black light behind him suddenly expanded. His body trembled, and the soles of his feet left the ground. He strangely retreated backward without using any strength, leaving behind illusory afterimages that constantly flashed. The chain swept past, but it didn't hit Noah. Instead, it only hit the afterimage left by Noah. Oh, seeing that the chain attack was dodged by Noah, Hades raised his brows and sneered. He waved his hand, and the chain that missed its target suddenly raised its head like a venomous snake and chased after Noah at lightning speed. Noah's figure rapidly retreated under the propulsion of the death feathers. His body drew a dancing trajectory, and every time he was able to narrowly avoid the chain attack. At the same time, a ball of green flame burst out from Noah's hand. The pitch-black knight's sword emerged from the green flame and fell into Noah's hand. To deal with Hades, Noah actually used his full strength. Just from the fact that Hades was able to make Noah feel a sense of danger. Just like Bio, Noah knew that this Hades was definitely not an ordinary person's strength. If he didn't use his full strength, Noah definitely wouldn't be able to contend against him. As a result, under the effect of the knight's sword, to shorten the distance and the feather of death, to increase the speed of the feather of death, the magic chain that Hades continued to chase could only continuously sweep past the afterimages left behind by Noah, failing to achieve any results. This caused Hades's originally somewhat relaxed old face to gradually tighten. His brows also slowly creased. Hades didn't expect that Noah actually had this kind of ability, to be able to freely dodge his attacks. It must be known that even if it was an ordinary 10 Saint Grand Magus, or even a powerhouse at the level of Makarov, Hades was confident that he could rely on this move to make the other party endlessly embarrassed and unable to dodge in the end. I still underestimated you. As expected of the Archmage who was able to kill Joseph and defeat Jalal. I still thought that you were at most at the level of Makarov. It seems that if I don't use some of my true ability, I really might not be able to take you down. Leaving these words, Hades even stretched out his other hand. Just like his other hand, a magic array fluctuated in front of his palm. A pitch-black, fog-like magic power curled around it. Soon after, in the midst of a clattering sound, another magic chain suddenly shot out from the magic array. It coiled around in the air like a huge net, covering the sky and covering the earth as it moved towards the dodging Noah. Ha 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 ha. I'm dancing with magic. In the midst of Hades' joyful laughter, the two chains encircled Noah from the top and the bottom, one from the front and one from the back. It was almost like an inescapable net, sealing off all of Noah's escape routes. In this way, Noah had no choice but to resist it head-on. At that moment, Noah stopped his futile dodging and looked at the magic chain that was rapidly enlarging in his eyes. Under the gaze of Hades, he actually closed his eyes. The magic chain arrived in an instant. The two magic chains, one from the front and one from the back, connected to each other like snakes biting the head and tail, forming a ring. Like a meat grinder, they suddenly shrank towards the surrounded Noah. However, at the moment when the chains encircling from all directions were about to land on Noah's body, Noah suddenly opened his eyes. On the body of the knight's sword that was in Noah's hand, the rows of mysterious runes lit up under the infusion of magic power. Harden. Sharp. Accelerate. At this moment, all of the runes engraved on the knight's sword played their role. In addition to the knight's sword's ability to control the distance, reducing the sword's slashing distance to the limit, increasing the sword's speed by 100 times, and increasing the force of impact by 10,000 times. Noah's knight's sword had turned into a true killing machine. Clang! Thus, in the clear sound of the sword, the space in front of Noah began to distort. Following the distortion of space, a ray of sword light flashed out in an extremely perfect trajectory. Clang! Suddenly, the ray of sword light and the chain collided, causing a violent shockwave, bursting out bursts of sparks and crisp sounds. Pong! Under that terrifying sword strike, Hades' snake-like chain seemed to have been hit by something heavy, and in the midst of an explosion, it was directly scattered. Not only magic power, but even sword skills are so outstanding? Hades' pupil shrank. You little brat, where did this freak come from? So you don't know? When you mentioned fairy tale, didn't you sound very high and mighty? Don't tell me even I don't know. Holding the knight's sword, Noah sneered. I am Makarov's grandson. You are Makarov's grandson. Hades was really surprised, and then he muttered to himself. Now that you mention it, a few years ago I heard that Makarov had a grandson, but then he disappeared without a trace. Could it be that you are that person? Who knows? Noah pointed the knight's sword at Hades. I only need to know that you are the enemy of fairy tale. That's enough. Little brats these days are all so arrogant. It seems that the brats in Makarov's guild are all very lively. Hades said this, but his eyes turned cold. That's good. The battle with you brat can't be delayed any longer. Otherwise, even if the council has been disbanded, the brazen actions of Devil's Heart will attract those annoying official guilds, and even attract the attention of the kingdom. Saying this, Hades's body rose with a black mist-like magic power, and his fierce eyes were like a beast staring at its prey, showing an ominous glint. I'll let you see the true form of my magic. As the black mist-like magic power rose from Hades's body, a dense and heavy pressure filled the magic airship. Noah's heart suddenly tightened. He felt it. The moment Hades became serious, in a corner of the airship, a strange wave spread out. At the same time, Hades's magic power and strength rose crazily, reaching a level that even Noah couldn't help but be surprised. Chapter 439, that the black mist-like magic power that lingered around Hades became denser with the passage of time. Every time it became denser, Hades' aura would also become more vigorous. Under such circumstances, the magic power on Hades' body continued to rise. The magic power permeated the air in the form of black mist, causing Hades' aura to become more and more powerful. Noah's outstanding sensing ability made him realize the terror of Hades at this moment. If it was said that before, Noah still had doubts about whether he needed to use his full strength to fight. Now, these doubts had all disappeared without a trace. Noah was sure that Hades' strength was definitely not inferior to his own. Even if it continued to climb, surpassing Noah would definitely not be an impossible thing. How long has it been since I showed this level of strength? Hades slowly took a step forward. Immediately, the strange black mist that lingered around his body undulated up and down like boiling water, bringing about a kind of gloomy and evil feeling that made one's heart palpitate. Just based on this, let me give you a little compliment, little brat. Listening to Hades' vicious words, and feeling the rising aura on Hades' body, Noah's hand that was holding the sword also tightened little by little. It seemed that today was going to be a bit of a bitter battle. I'll ask you one last time. Hades, who was surrounded by dense black magic power, looked at Noah with a gloomy face. Do you want to join my guild and explore the abyss of the path of demons with me? Hearing this, Noah slowly took a breath and curled his lips into a smile. Daydream on. It was exactly the same answer as before. It was also this answer that made Hades completely give up. Is that so? Hades fiercely raised his head. The murderous aura in his ferocious eyes soared. Hades' voice seemed to come from the real abyss, drilling into Noah's ears. Then die here. The moment his words fell, the magic power chain was like a python, cutting through the air and fiercely shooting towards Noah. Although this magic power chain was an extremely simple magic structure, in the hands of Hades, it was more effective than any ancient magic, lost magic, forbidden magic, or rare magic. Under the enhancement of Hades' terrifying magic power, the magic power chain became who knows how many times faster than before, turning into a thoroughly poisonous snake. Everywhere it passed, the air suddenly shook, causing the snake-like chain to bite towards Noah. Facing this unreserved attack of Hades, Noah did not dare to be careless. The hands, feet, knight's sword, and death feather form magician suddenly slightly shook at the same time, accompanied by a burst of magic power spread out, like electric lines, climbed onto Noah's hands, feet, and weapons. Noah's enhanced magic was originally meant to strengthen the target of the spell. Hands could increase arm strength. Feet could increase leg strength. Knight's sword could increase its sharpness. Magician in the death feather form could increase its performance and power, directly increasing Noah's flying speed and dodging speed. In other words, increasing his mobility. Thus, under the full power of the enhanced magic, Noah's physical ability and weapon ability both rose by a level. Clang! Relying on the death feather form magician to push, Noah's figure rapidly retreated. The knight's sword in his hand turned into a sword light, fiercely striking the oncoming chain. Clang! A clear sound like a bell rang. However, it was different from the last time. This time, in a direct collision with Hades' magic, not only was Noah unable to break the chain, but he also felt an abnormally strong impact from above, through the knight's sword, directly acting on his body, causing Noah to let out a muffled groan, his figure rapidly retreating. I can freely dance magic, kid. Take a good look at a realm you have never seen before. Hades' cold voice resounded across the sky. Immediately, the two magic chains shot out once again, Each of the magic chains was twice as dense as before, becoming extremely powerful. Facing Hades, whose attacks had suddenly become a lot crazier, Noah fell into a disadvantageous position for a moment. He could only rely on the mobility of the death feather to dodge and retreat while thrusting his sword at the chains that were chasing after him. Ding 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 ding! Suddenly, above the magic airship, in the sky, the gorgeous sword light and the snake-like magic chains intertwined and collided like lightning, bursting out a series of crisp sounds, causing dazzling sparks to fly in all directions. In such a situation, Noah felt that the force transmitted from the chains was becoming stronger and stronger. In addition to Hades' almost crazy attacks, even if Noah used the enhanced magic to strengthen his arm strength, his arm had long been shaken to the point of numbness. Hades did not give Noah a moment to catch his breath. The hands holding the two magic chains waved again and again, causing the two magic chains to dance in an even more unpredictable manner, bringing about a burst of oppressive wind sounds, continuously attacking Noah violently. This can't go on. With such a thought flashing through his mind, Noah decisively mobilized the surging magic in his body to the extreme, causing his body to be covered in a bright white light. Instead of retreating, he took the initiative to move forward, exposing his chest, and welcomed the magic chains that were violently shooting towards him. Bang! The magic chains were like two heavy hammers, directly falling on Noah's chest, causing a muffled sound in unison. However, most of the muffled noises were the sound of the magical chains shattering, as they were shrouded by the brilliant white light that shrouded Noah's body. As for the remaining small part, it was the sound of the magic chains' heavy force falling on Noah's body. Bearing this force, Noah felt as if he had been ruthlessly hit by two weightless and invisible cars, but he did not suffer any injuries. However, Noah borrowed this force, along with the death feather form of the magician behind him, and instantly pulled away from Hades, leaving the magic airship, and flew downwards. Hades immediately jumped up, directly jumping down from the magic airship, and chased after Noah, landing directly on the ground. In the whistling sound of the wind, Noah seemed to be doing an extreme challenge. First, he swooped downwards at an extremely fast speed, and then when he was about to reach the ground, he fiercely turned, almost scraping the ground in a dangerous arc. His body spun, like a gust of wind, sweeping across the ground below, and once again suspended in midair. At the same time, Hades' body seemed to be completely weightless. Under the support of a burst of magic, he lightly landed on the ground, making a loud landing sound. "How is it, little brat? Little brat?" Hades leisurely crossed his arms and stared at Noah with a mocking look. "This is the first time you've seen this kind of magic, right?" Noah slightly narrowed his eyes, but in his heart, he had to admit that this Hades was indeed the strongest magic shooter he had ever seen in his life. That kind of control of magic at will, using magic as if it was dancing, did not seem like he was borrowing the power of magic at all. Instead, it was as if he had naturally turned magic into a part of his body, as if he was using his arms and body to control magic freely. Frankly speaking, Noah was able to reach a realm much stronger than the average 10 great magic shooters at such a young age entirely, because he was born with unparalleled magic power and hard work. Magic, swordsmanship, close combat ability. Noah relied on his outstanding talent and hard work to far surpass others in these fields. But as the saying goes, there is always someone better than you. And there is always someone better than you, right? Just in terms of magic alone, Noah believed that there was no one in this world who could surpass Hades. Perhaps only the legendary first-generation President Mavis and dark magic shooter Jerv could surpass Hades in the field of magic? At this moment, a burst of chaotic footsteps suddenly broke into the scene. Noah and Hades were startled at the same time, and raised their heads to look at the source of the sound. Then their expressions changed at the same time. Under the leadership of Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha, the magic shooters of Fairy Tale had actually gathered together at some point in time, and were majestically charging towards them. Chapter 440. Noah. Amidst the loud and orderly shouts, a group of Fairy Tale's arch shooters, regardless of whether they were missing or not, were all present. Seeing Noah confronting Hades without any obvious injuries, Mira, Lysana, Elisha, and the others couldn't help but inwardly breathe a sigh of relief. Is this guy the enemy? The hot-tempered Nez couldn't help but clench his fists and stand up, glaring at Hades as he shouted loudly. You actually captured all of us, you bastard. See if I don't beat you up. Calm down. Naz. Seeing that Naz was about to rush out, Gray hugged him, his face full of shock as he looked at Hades, whose whole body was shrouded in a black mist-like magic power. His forehead began to drip with sweat. That's not a level we can deal with. Look carefully. After hearing Gray's words, all the fairy tale magic shooters, who were originally furious about being captured, finally discovered the evil and vast magic power coming from Hades' body. It was as if a basin of cold water had been poured over their hearts, causing them to turn cold. Laxus was among them. As for Noah, who was confronting Hades, he stared closely at Hades and spoke without turning his head back. He didn't expect Hades to be like this. Why are you here? Actually, Freed still had a puppet on him. After we brought Freed back to the guild leader led everyone on a mission. Elisha shielded Lucy, Lebby, and the others behind her. She also stared at Hades and spoke somewhat nervously. We found everyone who had lost consciousness on a nearby hill. After waking them up, we felt a powerful magic power appear here, so we all came together. You found everyone? Noah asked in surprise. But didn't you meet any enemies there? Because of Hades' interference, Noah didn't have time to take care of his captured fairy tale companions, but he didn't forget that Eurelia was also there. Logically speaking, Alyssa and the others should have met Erudia when they were looking for their companions in the guild. However, Lysana's answer was just as surprising. Enemies? We didn't see any enemies. No. Noah frowned. This Eurelia, every time after completing the task given to her, she does as she pleases. Hades also narrowed his eyes, then swept his gaze over all the members of Fairy Tale. Finally, his eyes fixed on an old man in the crowd. Long time no see, Makarov. Hearing Hades' words, everyone present was startled at first, then they subconsciously gathered their gazes on Makarov in the middle of the crowd. However, Makarov's performance surprised everyone. Guild leader, Mira said in surprise. What's wrong with you? Makarov did not answer Myra's question. Instead, he stared blankly at Hades. His aged eyes were filled with joy, astonishment, shock, bewilderment, disbelief, and other emotions. You are. Do you still remember me? Little brat. Hades smiled coldly. It's been almost 50 years since we last met. You've aged. Hearing this, everyone understood. Makarov and Hades were old acquaintances. Moreover, judging from Makarov's behavior, their relationship seemed to be quite special. Why are you here? Makarov pointed at Hades with a trembling finger in disbelief. Why have you become like this? No one could understand why Makarov would say such a thing. Therefore, no one knew that although Makarov did know Hades in his memory, Hades wasn't this sinister and evil person. Instead, he was a very amiable old man. Noah didn't know why Makarov was so shocked, but looking at Makarov, he didn't seem to see Hades as an enemy. Thus Noah suddenly spoke. Grandpa, he's the president of Grimoire Heart. Hades. The president of Grimoire Heart. Elisha, Mira, Lysana, Naz Gray, and the rest all had a drastic change in expression. Grimoire Heart. The magic shooters from Fairy Tale who were present also made a ruckus. This is impossible. Makarov seemed to be unwilling to accept it, and stepped forward agitatedly. This can't be true, right? President Prehito. The moment these words were spoken, the entire place fell silent. President Prehito. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Prehito. Noah, who was facing off against Hades, looked at Hades with astonishment. You're Prehito. As long as one was a member of Fairy Tale, it was impossible for them not to know what the name Prehito meant. This was because in Fairy Tale, the name Prehito had almost the same deterrence as the first president, Mavis. He was one of the 4 founders of Fairy Tale, the man who took over Fairy Tale from the first president, Mavis, and inherited Fairy Tale's legacy. Yes, Prihito was the second-generation guild master of Fairy Tail. In other words, the president of the strongest dark guild in the magic world, Hades, was once a member of Fairy Tail, and was even the president. Lucy couldn't help but take 2 steps back, looking at the sinister Hades with a face full of shock. Liar! Mira also couldn't help but cover her mouth, unable to hide her shock. He's the second president? Alesha's resolute eyes wavered. This can't be true, right? Lisanna, Levi, Naz Gray, and the others were all shocked, unable to react for a moment. TSK. Even Laxus seemed to have remembered who this person in front of him was, and was speechless. A troublesome person has appeared. Even the leaders of the Dark Guild were like this, not to mention the ordinary members, who were all stunned. Hee. Noah, who was floating in the air, looked down at Hades condescendingly and sneered. I didn't think that our Fairy Tail's second-generation guild leader would actually become the guild leader of a dark guild. This really isn't a small joke. When people face facts that they can't accept, they will always escape. Because you were proud of me in the past, you can't accept this fact. Just like how I can't accept the fact that I was once the president of Fairy Tail, Hades said to Noah in a cruel tone. After I passed the position of president to Makarov, my heart was only left with the pursuit of the path of magic. After saying this, Hades spread out his hands in front of everyone. After retiring from the Dark Guild, I embarked on a journey to pursue the path of magic. In the process, I discovered that magic is a miracle, the power to obtain hope in despair. Just like how light can only shine in the darkness, miracles are born from despair. In other words, the essence of magic is darkness. Hades's gaze swept across all the members of Fairy Tail, and his gaze became more and more vicious. After understanding this point, I discovered that in the light, the existence of Fairy Tail, which was changed by Makarov, is stupid. I really want to destroy it with my own hands. Do you want the blood and sweat of the first president to be completely destroyed? Makarov roared, and his body swelled up, becoming bigger and bigger. I won't let you do whatever you want, Prihito. No, Hades. You want to resist me with just you little brat. Hades sneered, closed his fingers and pointed at Makarov. Unfortunately, you can't win against me. After saying this, a strange black light flashed under Makarov's feet. Chapter 441. The surging evil mana rubbed against the air, causing it to become a little heavier. Before the gigantic Makarov could make a move, he felt a terrifying mana gathering under him that made his heart tremble. He looked down and saw a dark purple magic circle that was unknowingly under his feet, spinning on the ground. Feeling the terrifying mana gathering inside, Makarov's expression changed again and again, and he hurriedly roared at the surrounding people. Everyone, get out of here. Under Makarov's roar, Alesha was the first to react. Alesha, who also felt the terrifying mana gathering under Makarov's feet, did not hesitate to shout at the surrounding magic shooters. Leave! Leave quickly! This shout finally made all the members of the guild react, and they all moved away from Makarov's position in shock and anger. But in this way, what should Makarov do? Hiya! Amidst the earth-shattering roar, Makarov, who had become more than 10 meters tall, raised his huge fist against the whistling atmosphere and slammed it on the rotating magic circle on the ground. Boom! Very straightforwardly, the ground shattered together with the magic circle that was gathering the terrifying mana, scattering in all directions together with the gravel. However, the fragments of the shattered magic circle suddenly trembled when they scattered in all directions, and actually expanded into smaller magic circles. As they spun, they seemed to form a more mysterious pattern, surrounding Makarov in the middle. Wong! In the next moment, the terrifying mana gathered in the magic circle erupted like a volcanic eruption, causing the magic circles to light up one by one. What? Makarov was shocked. Building a magic circle within a magic circle? Or was it formed in an instant? So many years have passed, kid. Although you have a certain amount of growth, how can you, who is dedicated to the operation of Fairy Tail, compare to me, who has been deeply immersed in the essence of magic all these years? Hades laughed out loud. Makarov, let me give you a lesson, See how I dance with magic? As soon as he finished speaking, the magic circles that surrounded every corner of Makarov's body gathered together and suddenly soared. With the terrifying degree of that mana, perhaps it would only take one hit for Makarov to lose the ability to fight, right? One of the top 10 magic shooters in the continent actually fell into such a dangerous situation in the blink of an eye. This made everyone in Fairy Tale turn pale with fright. Chairman, Alusha Naz Gray, and the others even tensed up their bodies, preparing to charge. Even Laxus's pupils shrank, clenching his fist, which was suffused with electric light, and his body began to crackle. At this moment, the magic circles that surrounded Makarov suddenly stopped, and were covered by an inexplicable white light. Pung! In the next instant, the white light seemed to have detonated the magic arrays one by one, causing them to explode and shatter. Hades' expression darkened, and he turned his head to look at the opposite side. After seeing my power, do you still intend to resist? That's right, I've witnessed your strength. Noah, who was holding a sword in one hand and extending his hand in the direction of Makarov with the other, raised his eyes and met Hades' eyes, his deep eyes bursting with light. So it's time for me to show you my strength. Oh. Hades raised his eyebrows and smiled. Stop. Noah. Makarov, who had just escaped from danger, shouted at Noah. Hades is too strong. You can't act recklessly. However, Noah ignored Makarov's words and calmly spoke. Grandfather, all of you retreat. It's best to retreat a distance. After speaking, waves of violent magic rose from Noah's body, turning into the most dazzling white light, like a pillar of light, rushing into the sky. Otherwise, I don't know if I can guarantee your safety next. Feeling the storm of magic rising from Noah's body to the point where it could rival Hades, the people in Fairy Tale were shocked. On the contrary, Hades smiled coldly at Noah, his body surging with black magic. Come, little brat. Hades suddenly stretched out his hand. A pitch-black magic formation immediately fluctuated in front of his palm. Like a cannon, his whole body trembled, causing a chain of magic to turn into a bolt of lightning, shooting straight at Noah. Noah's hand tightly grasped the knight's sword. His eyes did not waver in the slightest. He even closed his eyes and activated his sensing ability. Then Noah's body lightly moved to the right, taking a step horizontally. Xiao! The chain of magic that turned into a bolt of lightning pierced through the air, sticking close to Noah's shoulder and shooting behind him without slowing down. Wang! At this moment on the knight's sword in Noah's hand, a beautiful white light slowly lingered, covering the entire body of the knight's sword. Superior Destruction Magic Crush. After Crush was added to the knight's sword. Noah twisted his wrist. The knight's sword in his hand brought out a dazzling white light, fiercely chopping at the magic chain. Clang! Under the effect of Crush, the magic in the chain rapidly disintegrated and collapsed at an extremely frightening speed, causing the magic chain to become more and more illusory. This scene made Noah say, as expected in his heart, but also secretly felt that it was troublesome. With Hades' magic, Noah's Crush was no longer able to cleanly disintegrate his magic. Little did he know, Hades was slightly alarmed as he felt the magic on the chain continuously disintegrate. Soon after, he sneered and moved his hands, forming one hand seal after another, causing the space in front of him to pull out afterimages of magic. Wang! Amidst the vibrations in the air, the afterimages of magic that Hades pulled out combined to form several magic formations, superimposed on each other. Their outer appearance was like a display of a celestial body. Inside, magic was crazily flowing. Amaterasu 28 Styles. With a light shout, Hades fiercely patted the celestial body like intricate geometric pattern in front of him. A burst of invisible attack suddenly shot out like a spear, surrounded by a dense and strange magic. It swept out like lightning and flashed in the air. At this moment, Noah's heart gave rise to a warning sign, causing his heart to slightly tighten. Without hesitation, Noah added Crush to his body, causing his whole body to be covered in a dense white light. It even suddenly expanded, like a wave, with a dazzling light, expanding and expanding. Wang! Almost at the same time, the space around Noah distorted, and a violent burst of invisible attack mixed with a frightening magic suddenly exploded. Boom! An astonishing loud sound reverberated. They could only see that the space around Noah suddenly exploded without any warning, stirring up a majestic pitch-black flame, constantly stirring up the place where Noah originally stood. Seeing this scene, the faces of the people in the guild, who were already some distance away, changed abruptly. However, the sharp-eyed people had already discovered it. In the center of that huge explosion, a dazzling white light was rolling around like a tide, causing all the impact, explosion, magic, and pitch-black flame to be annihilated in an instant. Amazing! Hades praised from the bottom of his heart, while his palm fluctuated and rotated a magic array. But it's not over yet. Accompanied by the violent sound of wind breaking, the magic chain suddenly swept out like lightning, heading straight for the center of the huge explosion in front of them. At the center of the huge explosion, Noah's body was covered in white light, and his figure turned into an afterimage. With a faint sound of wind breaking, he retreated out of the range of the huge explosion, quickly waving the knight's sword in his hand. Ding 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 ding. Like a violent storm, the magic chain was unceasingly thrown towards Noah, colliding with the knight's sword in Noah's hand, causing a continuous burst of crisp sounds and fierce sparks. Chapter 442. Ding 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 ding. The magic chain was like a shadow following the body. It was like a venomous snake that stretched its body and bit at the prey in front of it. It fiercely collided with the pitch-black knight's sword, causing a continuous burst of crisp sounds and sparks. Noah had already superimposed the enhanced magic and the death feather form of the magician, pushing his speed to the limit. However, he was still only slightly faster than Hades' attack speed. Is this all you've got? Looking at Noah, who was entangled with his magic power chains and engaged in a high-speed battle, a cold glint flashed in Hades' eyes. It's really amazing to be able to reach this level at this age. The so-called genius is probably someone like you. However, you're still too young, brat. Hades spoke with assurance. However, just as he finished speaking, he suddenly saw Noah's body quietly tremble. Hades, who was keenly aware of this, was startled at first, but soon after, a chill surged in his heart. As an old man who was many years older than Makarov, Hades' many years of research on magic and his keen intuition at this moment drove his body, causing him to rapidly retreat like lightning. Just as Hades retreated less than a meter away, the space in front of him suddenly fluctuated. A figure quietly appeared like a ghost, and the knight's sword in his hand, which was shrouded in a brilliant white light, brought along a chill that made Hades' scalp numb and fiercely chopped down. Clang! The pitch-black knight's sword just brushed past Hades' face and fell to the ground less than 5 centimeters away from Hades' face. With the knight's sword's distance-controlling effect and the speed rune's support, even Hades would have been severely injured by Noah's slash if he didn't rely on his outstanding intuition. Therefore, although Noah's sword didn't hit its target, the chill and the danger of taking a stroll around the gates of hell still made Hades feel a lingering fear in his heart. As his figure rapidly retreated, cold sweat couldn't help but appear on his forehead, and his back was soaked with sweat. If not for his quick reaction, Hades might have been arrogant a second ago, but in the next second, the situation would have been reversed, and he would have been defeated by the brat Hades. That brat's chop speed is actually so frightening, and the ability to suddenly disappear and reappear again. Could it be that he's still hiding some magic related to space? When Hades thought about how he had just mocked Sherfong, only to have Sherfong retaliate, he could not help but feel enraged. Abruptly, he changed his hand seals, and an unprecedentedly large magic array appeared before him. In the midst of the clanking sound of chains, magic chains shot out from the magic array. From afar, it looked like a huge spider web was emerging from the magic array, and Hades was in the center of the huge spider web, just like an evil spider. A steady flow of magic power gushed out from Hades' body, causing the magic chains to immediately linger with a strange black gas. Feeling the steady flow of magic power from Hades' body, Noah couldn't help but secretly curse. Could it be that this guy's magic power is inexhaustible? In the past, Noah had the privilege of squandering a large amount of magic power. Now Noah finally saw the same privilege from others. He also understood how crazy his opponents were when they faced him in the past. In that instant, the chains intertwined together, turning into a black python that seemed to be alive. It had a strange metallic texture, but it gave off a terrifying and cold aura, like a malicious spirit from the abyss. This is the combination of chains and darkness magic. Feel the horror of the magic path from the abyss. In the midst of Hades' voice, the huge tail of the black python formed by chains and black fog fiercely swung. In the next second, it immediately cut through the space and swept towards Noah like lightning. In the air, Noah's eyes coldly looked at the huge black python rushing towards him with an ear-piercing sound. He took a light breath and suddenly clenched the knight sword in his hand. Instead of retreating, he directly rushed towards the huge black python, under the horrified gazes of his companions in the distance. Clang! A gorgeous sword light suddenly shot out from Noah's body and fiercely fell on the body of the black python. Clang! The sharp sword light stirred up the sound of steel colliding with steel, and also brought about violent sparks, splashing in all directions. However, this attack merely caused the black python's body to tremble. If you ignore the white light attached to the body of the black python through the sharp sword light, the white light that represented crush suddenly shook and dyed the black python's body into a pure white color. Bang bang bang! Immediately, under the effect of the white light, the huge black python seemed to have swallowed a bomb. Various parts of its body produced muffled sounds of explosion. Every time a muffled explosion sounded, a crack would appear on the body of the huge chain python. Don't get carried away, brat. The veins on Hades's forehead bulged, and his hand seal changed again. The huge python suddenly opened its mouth, and a viscous swamp-like darkness burst out from it and sprayed towards Noah's direction. The darkness rushed over, but Noah's charging figure did not stop because of this. A gorgeous white light directly rose from his body and covered Noah's entire body. Suddenly, as soon as the viscous swamp-like darkness touched Noah's body, it was as if it was incinerated by flames. Amidst a sizzling sound, it was completely shattered. At this moment, Noah rushed to the top of the black python's head. Ha! Noah directly let out a rare cold shout. He raised the knight sword in his hand and tightly gripped the hilt with both hands. He aimed at the black python, as if his body and the knight sword in his hand had become one. His whole body turned into a sharp sword and fell from the sky like a meteor. Xiao! Under the sharp sound of the explosion and the shocked gazes of his companions who were watching this scene from afar, Noah swooped down and landed heavily on the head of the giant python. Poochie! This was the sound of the sharp black knight sword directly penetrating the head of the giant python. This was the sound of the resplendent white light rising from Noah's body through the black knight sword and desperately flowing into the body of the giant python. Bang! This was the sound of the giant python's huge body slowly stiffening for a moment. Under the effect of the crush magic, the giant python turned into countless broken chains and burst open in a low explosion sound. Wah! Seeing his attack, which was a combination of chains and darkness magic, being cleanly crushed by Noah, Hades also opened his eyes wide in astonishment. Hades already felt that he thought highly of Noah. Even Makarov was unable to force Hades to use a combination of magic to counter the attack, but Noah was able to force him to use it. In addition, Noah's age was still much younger than himself, so Hades already showed that he thought highly of him. However, Hades still didn't think that he still couldn't defeat Noah. Therefore, Hades didn't notice. In the air, amidst the countless shards of the shattered chains, the sword-wielding figure suddenly disappeared. Hades only felt that his eyes were dazzled, and a figure strangely appeared. On the palm of the figure, a row of exquisite runes quietly rotated like a ring. This is my power. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah suddenly exerted force under the gaze of Hades's narrowed pupils. He clenched his fist and pinched the rune that was rotating like a ring into his hand, that a burst of strong light rose from Noah's palm. An earth-shattering sound brought about a surge of violent waves of fire, rolling and expanding. The blazing temperature directly caused the surrounding air to become scorching hot. even giving rise to a dry feeling. Looking at the expanding waves of fire, the members of Fairy Tale, in the distance, all became sluggish due to excessive shock. Most of them didn't even have any reaction, and could only stare blankly at the sea of fire that blotted out the sky and earth, speechless. Chapter 443. Whoosh! The wind waves, fire waves, and gravel caused by the strong explosion were constantly flying in all directions with the whistling of the wind. From time to time, they would rush to the sky and expand from time to time, turning the area within 100 meters of the center of the explosion into a scene like a Red Lotus hell. Under the attentive gazes of countless people in the distance, the wind and fire waves finally slowly dissipated, gradually allowing the scene within to be exposed under the sun once again. The first thing that entered everyone's line of sight was a mess on the ground. Just like a joke, the ground that was still intact not long ago seemed to have been hit by a huge meteorite falling from the sky at this moment, exposing pitch-black rock formations and terrifying craters. Traces of smoke and fire were still undulating in the corners of the huge crater. The inside of the huge crater was all scorched black, as if it had been burned by a raging fire. And in the huge crater, a figure holding a pitch-black knight's sword with 2 pairs of light wings, made of black light on his back, was undulating with a brilliant white light. His body was very clean, and the previous shocking explosion seemed to have been completely annihilated by the layer of brilliant white light on his body. It did not cause any damage to his body. That was naturally Noah. Not far away from Noah, another figure knelt on the ground with one knee on the ground, his hand covering his chest. His entire body was emitting light smoke, and the black gas-like manna around him had completely dissipated. He looked extremely miserable. Clearly, compared to Noah, Hades had indeed suffered a direct hit from the shocking explosion just now, and he was even injured. The person who could overwhelmingly suppress Makarov was injured in the hands of Noah, just like that. This fact shocked the group of Fairy Tale's magic shooters, and made them extremely excited. Good, Nez could not help but shout. Let's send him flying like this. Noah. As expected of him, Gray also looked quite excited. That guy is no match for him at all. So powerful. Lucy was already stunned. Truly amazing. So Noah is this strong? Even Levi exclaimed in disbelief. Seriously, I can't compare to him at all. Alusha, Mira, and Lisanna smiled at each other, their hearts filled with pride. As for Makarov, his eyes were filled with shock as if he couldn't believe what he saw. Laxus clenched his fists tightly and laughed bitterly. Is this his true strength? However, the group of Fairy Tale magic shooters who were in shock did not know that Noah, who had caused all this, was looking straight at Hades. He could not help but frown when he saw that Hades' body was emitting light smoke, and his clothes were more or less tattered. He seemed to be in a sorry state, but in fact, he did not suffer much damage at all. As expected, even if all kinds of runes were used together, magic alone would not be able to cause much damage to a high-level opponent. There were actually many limitations to magic. Even the seemingly all-encompassing rune magic was the same. For example, its power was weak. Unlike the magic of this world, the advantage of magic was that it had a corresponding effect in all kinds of fields. But in terms of power, it was not particularly outstanding. After all, magic was originally a kind of power that existed in the root, and there was only so much of this kind of power. The more people who used it, the weaker the magic would be. Therefore, magicians would treat the concealment of magic as the most important thing. Therefore, even if Noah used all kinds of powerful runes together, it would not be able to cause much damage to Hades. Of course, since Noah said as expected, it proved that he had more or less guessed the situation. So after detonating the runes, he added a real blow. If someone were to observe carefully, they would definitely be able to discover it. In Noah's hand, the tip of the knight's sword was dripping with a trace of dark red blood. And in Hades' hand that was covering his chest, traces of dark red blood also slowly flowed out. Feeling the pain coming from his chest, Hades' face slightly twisted. It was because of anger. To actually do it to this extent, it seems that I still underestimated you, little brat. With a gloomy voice that contained extreme viciousness, Hades stood up, and his gaze that seemed to be able to cut people into pieces directly nailed onto Noah's body. "But you don't think that you can beat me like this, do you?" Saying such a sentence, Hades once again released that extremely majestic magic that seemed to have no limit, as if it had no consumption from the beginning, and stretched out his hand towards Noah. The familiar magic formation once again rotated in front of Hades's palm. Seeing this scene, everyone's body tensed up, and their heartbeats also sped up. Only Noah's eyes flashed with a touch of ridicule. Then, something that no one expected happened. Gotcha! Just like this, without the slightest warning, the magic formation in front of Hades suddenly stagnated, and with a sudden cracking sound a crack appeared. Wah! Hades turned pale with fright. At this moment, cracks covered the entire magic array in front of Hades's palm, and then, with a bang, it directly burst open. Impossible! Hades cried out involuntarily. My magic? Your magic? On the opposite side, Noah sarcastically smiled and suddenly raised the knight's sword in his hand. The magic you're talking about is this? As soon as his voice fell, the pitch-black knight's sword in Noah's hand suddenly ignited a burst of blue flame, and a magic formation that was exactly the same as the one used by Hades fluctuated in front of the sword, and with a crisp sound of collision, it spat out a magic chain. Whoosh! In Hades's fiercely narrowed pupils, the magic chain was like a bullet that shot out of a barrel. With the momentum of a meteor, it flashed through the air, and with a sharp sound, it fiercely shot towards Hades's direction. Hades reacted in time, and hurriedly retreated. His figure flashed, and he quickly dodged to the side. However, almost at the same time, Noah suddenly waved the knight's sword in his hand, causing the magic chain connected to the knight's sword to tremble. With a swing, the magic chain forcefully turned when Hades changed direction, and with friction in the air, it caught up with Hades. Pa! The hook at the front of the magic chain was like a poisonous snake that directly bit into the arm of the alarmed Hades. Ha! Noah coldly shouted, and stretched out his other hand to grab the magic chain connected to the knight's sword, and forcefully pulled and flung it. Suddenly, the magic chain that bit Hades' arm pulled Hades up, and heavily threw him to the ground. Pung! Hades, who lost his balance, fell to the ground with his back, and fiercely smashed into the ground. Goo! Feeling the pain from his back, Hades let out a muffled groan, but very quickly his face hardened. He stretched out his hand to grab the magic chain, and using it to jump up, he once again landed on the ground. He also forcefully pulled on the magic chain, and fought with Noah. While pulling on the magic chain, Hades stared at Noah. His eyes were filled with viciousness and disbelief. You took away my magic. Noah met Hades' eyes full of disbelief, and the corner of his mouth raised into a provocative arc. Noah's knight's sword had the true power of the Black Tea King. It was a power that could take away the ability of others. However, to use this power, the most basic prerequisite was to come into contact with the opponent. Therefore, when using the knight's sword to cut Hades, Noah also released the power of the Black Tea King, and took away Hades' magic chain. Hades, who had reached the realm of dancing with magic, had been using this seemingly ordinary, but extremely troublesome magic. Now this magic was taken away by Noah, and Hades' threat decreased a little. Xiao! At this moment, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, a crystal ball with extreme speed shot towards Noah's direction. Chapter 444. Whoosh! When the sound of something breaking through the air approached from afar, and shot towards Noah's direction, most of the magic shooters from Fairy Tale, who were watching the battle from afar, did not notice it. Only those who were able to sense it were Makarov, Elusha, Mira, and Laxus, who were all S-rank magic shooters and above. At that moment, everyone, including Laxus, was suddenly startled. Careful! Actually, Noah did not need to be reminded, as he had already sensed it. Although he was wholeheartedly in a state of battle, when there was hostility, malice, and killing intent directed towards Noah, Noah's sensing ability would automatically be triggered, allowing him to sense everything. Therefore, When the sound of the crystal ball piercing through the air was heard, Noah immediately noticed the crystal ball that was shooting towards him. Without any hesitation, he lifted the knight's sword that was connected to the magic chain at the front end. However, at the same time, the crystal ball that was shooting towards Noah like a bullet stopped for no reason and changed its direction, shooting towards the tip of the knight's sword. There it was connected to the magic chain that bound Hades. Bang! In the next moment, under the direct attack of the crystal ball, the magic chain connected to the knight's sword was broken with a muffled sound. Noah and Hades, who were wrestling through the magic chain, both lost their balance because of the broken chain. Their bodies were thrown backwards, but they immediately stabilized themselves. Until then, the crystal ball that had turned into an afterimage and shot through the magic chain slowly slowed down and slowly fell into the hands of a young girl. Who else could it be other than Erudia? Noah turned his head and stared coldly at Erudia. The killing intent that flashed in his eyes made Erudia feel a chill in her heart. She could not even maintain her typical charming smile, and subconsciously avoided Noah's gaze. It seemed that she was afraid of Noah. However, that was not strange. Who was this man in front of her? He was someone who could confront the devil's heart head-on and turn the situation around several times. In the end, he gave Hades a head-on blow and even stole his magic. Erudia had never underestimated Noah. Being able to defeat Joseph and Jalal, who were 10th saints, was enough to prove that Noah was extraordinary. However, Erudia really did not expect Noah to be so strong that he could rival Hades. No one knew how terrifying Hades was better than Erudia. He was the closest to the abyss of the devil's path, the closest to Jerf. He had the ability to be called the strongest sorcerer in the current human world. He was more than 100 years old and possessed unimaginable magic power and longevity. Only then did Erudia realize how terrifying Noah was. Noah was able to face Hades head-on in a one-on-one battle, and even possibly defeat Hades. Naturally, a sense of fear arose in her heart. However, Erudia suppressed this trace of fear in the end. In a flash, she arrived at Hades' side. At the same time, all the members of Fairy Tale rushed over and arrived at Noah's side, confronting Hades and Erudia. "It's you." Seeing Erudia, Elusha, Naz, Lucy, and the others who had seen Erudia in the Tower of Paradise were surprised. Gray, on the other hand, had a solemn expression on his face, and his eyes flickered. "Erudia, huh?" Hades glanced at the broken chain biting his arm, slowly turning into pure magic power and dissipating. He did not even look at Erudia, as he spoke with a gloomy face. "Why did you attack? You didn't think I would lose to that brat, did you? How is that possible?" Erudia's expression did not change. She bent her body and smiled respectfully, neither servile nor overbearing. "It's just that that man is really difficult to deal with. Even if President Hades can deal with him, it should take a long time. It's not suitable for us to move around in this place for too long. I think, why don't we stop here today?" "What?" The first to react to this sentence was not Hades, but Noah, who raised the knight's sword in his hand and pointed it at Hades. "Trying to escape? Being able to deal an effective blow to me seems to have given you a lot of confidence." Hades' face turned cold. The magic power on his body turned into a black gas that constantly undulated around his body. "If I wanted to, I could have attacked Magnolia directly from the beginning. The reason I didn't do so was just to show you mercy, brat." These words made Noah's face turn gloomy. Hades was right. Without the council, Hades could have led his grimoire heart into Magnolia and massacred the fairy tale. In that case, with Hades' strength, not to mention the fairy tale, even Magnolia would suffer a great deal of casualties and become a living hell. But in the end, Hades did not do so. Instead, he used troublesome means to capture the fairy tale magic shooters one by one to lure Noah out. With Hades' strength, if his goal was really to lure Noah out, there was no need for him to do so. After all, apart from Noah, who else could stop Hades? Could it be that Hades did this just to show his magnanimity? Of course not. You didn't attack Magnolia directly, not because you were merciful, but because you were afraid. At this time, Makarov took a step forward and stared at Hades as he said, "Don't worry, Hades. Although I don't know what your goal is, You shouldn't have forgotten your words, right? Impossible. In fairy tale, there is that existence, Makarov said in a deep voice. You were afraid of that. So you didn't attack Magnolia directly, right? Precto. When these words came out of Makarov's mouth, Hades's expression became extremely unsightly, but he did not refute. Not refuting it this time was equivalent to admitting to it. So Noah finally understood why Hades would do such a troublesome thing as kidnapping the fairy tale magic shooters to lure Noah out. It was not because Hades was merciful, but because there was something in fairy tale that even Hades was afraid of. It was that Makarov mentioned. What was in fairy tale that even someone like Hades was afraid of? I've never even heard of it before. Not only Noah, but the rest of the people in fairy tale also showed doubtful, puzzled, or at a loss. Not to mention the people in fairy tale. Even Erudia frowned and looked at Hades in bewilderment. Could it be that there was something in fairy tale that even someone like Hades was afraid of? In the end, no one could answer this question. The black miasma around Hades slowly dissipated. He glanced at Makarov with a sinister gaze, then looked at Noah. After a while he said these words. All right, that's all for today. After saying this, Hades turned around. Although I'm only here because I'm interested, to be able to know that there's such a person in fairy tale, and to be able to test the strength of the other party, it can be said that I didn't come here in vain. But remember, the way fairy tale exists is wrong. For Jerf, for the world of magic, I will destroy fairy tale with my own hands. After saying this, without giving anyone a chance to react, Hades and Erudia suddenly floated up and flew into the sky at an extremely fast speed. They were taken away by a ray of light. It was the light that shot out from the magic airship. Noah and the others watched the magic airship fly to the other side of the sky and fell into silence. Chapter 445. By the time all the sorcerers in fairy tale had returned to the guild, the sky had already darkened. However, today was the only time that fairy tale still managed to gather everyone even though it was already night time. Makarov questioned the missing members about the events of the past 2 days. In the end, he couldn't get anything out of them. That was because many of them said that even they didn't know what was going on. Undoubtedly, they were still doing all sorts of things a second ago when they suddenly lost consciousness. By the time they woke up again, they were already woken up by Alusha, Mira, and Lisanna, who were led by the other members of fairy tale who hadn't been taken away. This was what the companions of fairy tale, who had been captured by Hades, had said. Naz and Gray were even more miserable. They only remembered that they were drunk, and when they woke up, they were already woken up by Alusha. It was only after Mira and Lisanna explained their situation that they understood. That was to say, these missing companions didn't even realize that they had been attacked. They lost consciousness in a daze and were taken away by Hades. However, with Hades' strength, dealing with Makarov was a piece of cake, let alone dealing with the ordinary sorcerers in fairy tale, who weren't even S rank. Although Naz and Gray were taken away because they were drunk and couldn't resist at all, Elfman, Kana, and the others who were about the same strength as Naz and Gray were also taken away by Hades without any resistance. Presumably, even if Naz and Gray had maintained their consciousness, they wouldn't have fared much better, right? On the other hand, because the one who attacked them wasn't Hades but Erudia, they still had a chance to fight back and buy time for Freed to escape. Of course, Hades took the people of fairy tale to lure out Noah, and he couldn't let Makarov know about it and use that so-called thing. It was possible that he would deliberately let someone go to tip him off. So in the end, the sorcerers in fairy tale had no choice but to admit that all of them had been captured by a single person. Damn it, Naz seemed to be very indignant. I really can't take this lying down. Let's just go on a crusade against that grimoire heart. What nonsense are you talking about? Alusha sighed. Let's not talk about the fact that Grimoire Heart is the strongest dark guild in the magic world. Even the guild leader of Grimoire Heart, Hades, is a sorcerer above our guild leader. It's really too dangerous to make an enemy out of such an opponent. But don't we still have Noah? Gray seemed to be unable to take this lying down and said somewhat unwillingly. Noah was able to deal with Hades, and we have the president on our side. Don't tell me we can't deal with the Grimoire Heart? Although we still have Grandpa, one of the 10 great holy sorcerers, Grimoire Heart might also have a sorcerer who can match Grandpa. After all, they are the strongest dark guild. At this time, Noah shook his head. Moreover, Hades is indeed very strong. Although I'm not afraid of him, to be honest, I don't have 100% confidence that I can defeat him. That old man's strength is definitely not below mine. But Noah, don't you still have Bio? Lucy said unexpectedly. Bio can already kill Joseph, one of the 10 great holy sorcerers. If you and Bio work together, don't tell me you still can't beat that Hades? Hearing this, Noah muttered to himself. After thinking for a while, he still shook his head. It's hard to say. Although I still have Bio, I feel that Hades still has other methods that he hasn't used yet. This was the truth. Although it was only for a moment, Noah felt an unusual aura on Hades' body. Or more accurately, on Hades' eye that was covered by the eye patch. It was like a volcano waiting to erupt. That strange aura even made Noah want to dig out Hades' eye to prevent it from being a threat. It could be imagined that Hades did indeed have other methods to hide, just like how Noah hid Bio. That was why even Noah didn't dare to say that he could definitely defeat Hades. Hades was indeed very strong. Even Big Brother Noah can't do anything? Asked Lisanna worriedly. Then what should we do? Well, Myra's smile was as gentle as ever, as if the existence of the Grimoire Heart couldn't affect her at all. Since there's no way to deal with it, then we'll just ignore it. No, that's impossible. Alesha refuted Myra's words. Have you forgotten that Hades has already made a very clear declaration that he will definitely destroy our guild? Our battle with the Grimoire Heart is absolutely unavoidable. Hearing Alesha's words, everyone suddenly thought of something and became silent. The strongest official guild Fairy Tale. The strongest dark guild Grimoire Heart. It seemed that these two guilds would have a battle sooner or later. There shouldn't be a problem, right? Lucy forced a smile. We still have Noah and Alesha, Lax's, Mishgang, Kilda's, and the guild leader on our side. It's impossible for us to lose to a dark guild, right? Hearing this, everyone's hearts calmed down. That's right. Even if the enemy was very strong, they weren't weak at all. Fairy Tale still had a chance of winning. No matter what, it's a bit too soon to talk about this. We just need to be prepared to face the enemy at any time. Noah clapped his hands and attracted everyone's attention. His strong and powerful voice echoed in the surroundings. Don't think about such troublesome things. If we really need to fight, then we'll fight to the end. We're Fairy Tale. We don't need to be afraid of any enemy. No matter what, I'll protect the guild. Inconceivably, the moment Noah said this, the uneasiness in everyone's hearts disappeared. That's right. Nash shouted excitedly. If you want to fight, then come quickly. Fairy Tale will never be afraid. Although the enemy is a magic shooter above the guild leader, we still have Noah on our side. Gray nodded heavily. There's nothing to be afraid of, just fight to the end. That's right, that's right. His fellow guild members shouted in unison, their hearts burning with passion, as their blood boiled with excitement. Seeing that the guild members had such a strong collective will because of Noah's words, Makarov's heart, which was heavy because Prehito had fallen into darkness and become a member of the Dark Guild, actually eased up. Now wasn't the time to be sad and heartbroken, since the former second guild leader had become the enemy of Fairy Tale. Then there was only one thing Makarov needed to do. Fight. It was that simple. Thinking of this, Makarov's heart also settled down. Then, as if he had thought of something, his eyes became sharp. The battle with Grimoire Heart is unavoidable. But before that, we have to deal with another matter first. Saying this, Makarov turned his head and silently looked in a direction. Around him, the group of Fairy Tale's magic shooters seemed to have understood something. They all fell silent and looked in that direction. There was a person there. Laxus. Chapter 446. An indescribable silence pervaded the entire Fairy Tale guild. Everyone looked at Laxus, who was sitting at a wooden table, with complicated emotions in their eyes. Anger? A little, right? After all, everyone knew that Raxus had kidnapped Mira and Lysana in order to settle things with Noah and snatch the position of Fairy Tale's leader. As a member of Fairy Tale, attacking one of their own guild members was definitely the biggest taboo in Fairy Tale. As such, it was only natural that everyone would be angry. However, most of them were worried. No matter what, Laxus was still a member of Fairy Tale. Even if he did not treat others as his companions, there were still many in the guild who treated Laxus as one of their own. For example, Naz. For example, Gray. And for example, Elisha, Mira, Lysana, and the others more or less treated Laxus as one of their own. Under such circumstances, it was natural for them to be worried for their companions. Even Noah could not help but sigh when Makarov said that he wanted to deal with Laxus. Noah had felt anger, sympathy, pity, and pain towards Laxus, but he had never hated him. That was because Noah knew that Laxus was not a bad person. He had just taken the wrong path. As for Laxus attacking Mira and Lysana, Noah did not mind teaching Laxus a lesson. But that was it. Noah, who understood Laxus, knew that Laxus would not go so far as to attack Mira and Lysana. Otherwise, even if the other party was Noah's brother, Noah would not have let Laxus live until now. As a result, Noah felt that the grudge between him and Laxus had already ended when the victor was decided. Meanwhile, Raxus also seemed to be reflecting on his actions. He no longer had any intention of continuing to insist on the position of guild leader or the strongest. If that wasn't the case with Raxus' character, he wouldn't have sat in a group of so many guild members. That was enough. With regards to Raxus, it was enough to have this kind of result. But Makarov clearly did not have the intention to settle things peacefully. Laxus. Makarov looked up at Laxus with his wrinkled eyes and said in a deep voice, "You should know what I would do in a situation like yours, right?" Hearing this, Laxus, who had been keeping his head down and silent, clenched his fists, threatening his guild members. This crime was almost as serious as harming the guild. Although Laxus had only captured Mira and Lysana, attacking guild members was already something that Makarov could not tolerate. In that case, there was only one outcome for Laxus: banished from the guild. As if sensing the same possibility, Freed, Bikesro, and a Barbara who were sitting around Laxus slammed the table and stood up. "Wait, leader," Freed hurriedly said. "We were the ones who attacked Mira and Lysana. Laxus did not attack." "That's right." Bikesro and a Barbara nodded. "If you want to punish someone, shouldn't you punish us instead?" "Do you really think I'm so old that I can't see this?" Makarov scolded. "You were ordered to do this by Laxus, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have done such a thing." Bikesro, Alba, and Jerlin were immediately speechless. Only Freed seemed to want to say something, but he was stopped by Laxus. "Alright, that's enough." Laxus stood up and faced Makarov. After a moment of silence, he said this expressionlessly. "Give your orders, leader." The words president expressed all the decisions in Raxus' heart. In the past, Laxus would only call Makarov an old man. Now, since Laxus acknowledged Makarov's identity as a member of Fairy Tale, it meant that Laxus would accept the leader's decision. He would accept any punishment from Makarov. "Is that so?" Makarov closed his eyes, but everyone could feel the mixed feelings in his heart. How long had it been since Laxus acknowledged him like this? As Laxus's grandfather, ever since Makarov expelled Laxus's father, his own son, from the guild, his relationship with Laxus had been extremely tense. It was to the point that it would not be strange if they broke off all ties at any time. All these years on the surface, Laxus had been staying in Fairy Tale, but he was becoming less and less attentive to Makarov's words, showing a rebellious mentality. If it was 7 years ago, Makarov could still order Laxus to follow Noah on missions to protect Noah. Then 7 years later, if he wanted to do the same thing again, Laxus would not agree. However, after so many years, Laxus finally acknowledged Makarov once again, which meant that his relationship with Makarov was about to be repaired. However, Makarov had to make this decision for the sake of the guild. How could Makarov not have mixed feelings about this? However, no matter how mixed his feelings were, Makarov still had to make a decision. Because, since the first guild leader Mavis, every generation of guild leaders had always protected the guild in this way. Makarov opened his eyes, and there was a look of determination in his eyes. Guild leader. Naz, Gray, Alusha, Mira, and Lisanna stepped forward at almost the same time. Say no more. Without giving anyone a chance to speak, Makarov said resolutely. I've already decided. That one sentence made everyone shut their mouths. Laxus. Makarov looked at Laxus and waved his hand. I've decided to give you. Wait. Grandfather. At this moment Noah spoke. Can I be the one to execute Laxus? You, Makarov said in surprise. Let alone Makarov, even his companions were stunned. Laxus kidnapped my fiancé. And the person he's targeting is also me. This matter is already inseparable from me. Noah suddenly smiled. Besides, grandfather, you've also announced that the next guild leader of Fairy Tale is me. Then even if I haven't succeeded the position, I still have the right to judge this matter, right? Saying this, Noah looked at Laxus. Laxus, what do you think? Laxus stared at Noah for a while before turning his head away. I don't care. Laxus, Freed, Bikesro, Alba and Jerlin cried out in surprise. In the eyes of the three members of Thunder God Council, Noah's actions were undoubtedly revenge on Laxus. Not to mention Thunder God Council. Even many of the high mages in the guild thought so. Only Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, Naz, Gray, Lebby, and the others looked at each other and smiled. Makarov's eyes also flickered. After a while, he exhaled and turned his back. Very well, it's up to you to decide. Noah smiled and shrugged. In that case, Laxus, as the fourth guild leader, I've decided to put you under house arrest. In the next 3 months, you're not allowed to accept any work, and you're not allowed to take a step out of the house. Reflect on your actions. Can you accept this? Hearing this, everyone finally understood. Noah didn't want revenge. He was just forgiving Laxus in disguise. Understanding this, Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and the others smiled helplessly. Even Freed, Bikesro, and Alba looked at Laxus in surprise. But they were also a little worried. They were worried that with Laxus's personality, he wouldn't appreciate it. However, it was obvious that everyone was worried for nothing. House arrest. Laxus was slightly dazed. The next second he smiled. His smile was as if he was suddenly enlightened, but also as if he was troubled. I understand. Immediately everyone laughed. Many of them even made fun of him. For Laxus, this punishment might be quite unbearable. After all, it was too much of a punishment for a child, wasn't it? Chapter 447. Because of all kinds of things that had happened, most of the guild members were still in the guild even after the sky had turned completely dark. Therefore, by the time all the members of the guild had left, it was already late at night. In his own room, Noah, who was lying on the bed, was not sleepy at all. He stared blankly at the ceiling, and his mind could not help but flash past the conversation with Makarov. To be honest, I am a little dissatisfied with your decision. Just when most of the guild members had left, Makarov came alone to Noah's side and said with a complicated and angry tone. Laxus attacked one of our guild members. You should have given him a heavier punishment for this kind of situation. You can even expel him from the guild, but you have only confined him. How can you let your guild members feel at ease? The #1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom. This name sounded very intimidating, but a guild was still a guild. Although the fairy tale was very famous, its nature still did not change. To put it bluntly, a guild was actually just a place for magic shooters to choose and execute their jobs. It was a place for mutual benefits. Naturally, no one would be willing to stay in a place where there could be a threat at any time. If a situation like Laxus, who attacked one of his guild members, was not dealt with properly, it would definitely bring a lot of unease to others. Who wouldn't feel uneasy when there was a dangerous person by their side at all times? Therefore, this kind of bad situation where one attacked one of their own had to be dealt with seriously. Otherwise, not to mention whether it would be able to convince the public, there would definitely be disputes in the hearts of others. And this would lead to cracks and chaos within the guild. It was precisely because of this that even if Makarov could not bear it, He had to expel Laxus from the guild. When Noah voluntarily proposed to deal with Laxus's matter, Makarov more or less guessed that Noah was going to be lenient, but he did not expect it to be to this extent. As a result, Makarov was dissatisfied. Grandpa, I can understand your desire to protect the guild, but can you have a little more confidence in everyone in the guild? Noah sighed in response to Makarov's dissatisfaction. Although I may sound like I'm boasting, Fairy Tale is really a great place. Even if there are people like Laxus who have done something wrong, the guild members will still care about old friendships. As long as there are friendships, then no matter how small these friendships are, it will become an excuse for the guild members to forgive Laxus. So, I'm confident that if I handle things this way, not only will everyone not feel uneasy or dissatisfied, they will even be very satisfied. Grandpa, don't you understand? That's true. Makarov still couldn't let it go. Even if the guild members don't mind, if Laxus's side is not heavily punished, won't it be hard to guarantee that he won't do the same thing in the future? Grandpa, it's not that I want to criticize you. Noah stared at Makarov for a while, then said after a while he was speechless. Undoubtedly, you know best in your heart that Laxus won't do the same thing in the future. So why are you still bringing up this possibility? Makarov was speechless. I know, Grandpa. Even if you know it in your heart, but the rules of the guild are still there. You are the guild master, so you have to set an example. But rules are meant to be changed. If you don't change them, then it's not for the good of the guild, it's pedantic. Noah said. In short, I've already made my decision. Unless Grandpa publicly announces that I'm disqualified from being the next guild master, I won't change this decision. You, Makarov was speechless and could only shout out in despair. Forget it. I don't care anymore. Do whatever you want. With that, Makarov left in a huff. Looking at Makarov's childish behavior, Noah couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Makarov's back that was about to disappear, he suddenly changed the topic and asked, "What's that?" Makarov's body froze. Noah didn't say anything else, and just stared at Makarov's back without saying anything. Noah believed that Makarov could feel his gaze and understand his question. During the confrontation with Hades, Makarov said that Hades didn't attack Magnoria with great fanfare because of the existence of that in Fairy Tale. But when did Fairy Tale have something that even a character like Hades was afraid of? Although he left Fairy Tale for about 6 years, Noah grew up in Fairy Tale and was Makarov's grandson. It was impossible for him to not know about Fairy Tale. Then what is that? If there was something that even Hades was afraid of, was it discovered in the 6 years after Noah joined Fairy Tale? Or did it already exist? And from Makarov's performance during the confrontation with Hades, the so-called, that didn't seem to be something that could be openly taken out. It definitely couldn't be ignored. Therefore, Noah had to ask this question. That's not something that can be casually asked. I hope you don't ask. Under Noah's gaze, Makarov's stiff body gradually relaxed and he sighed. That's true, but as the next president of Fairy Tale, you are qualified to know this matter. After saying such a sentence, Makarov left without looking back. When you become the president of Fairy Tale, I will tell you everything, but before that, don't ask anything, and I won't say anything. After saying that, Makarov left directly. Looking at Makarov's gradually fading back, Noah didn't move at all, and remained silent for a long time. Thinking back to that conversation, Noah's heart couldn't calm down. Although he didn't know what the so-called that in Fairy Tale was, but if it could threaten Hades, then it could most likely threaten Noah as well. Of course, Noah wasn't afraid because of the existence of such a thing in Fairy Tale. But he couldn't help but ponder. Since Fairy Tale had such an existence, then wouldn't there be similar things in other places? Just like the magical elven power of the council and our system that Jalal used 8 years to build. There must be many more in this world, right? Then, if he were to encounter such things in the future, would he be able to walk through it as smoothly as before? Would he be able to protect Mira and Lysana? Would he be able to protect his companions? And how many existences as powerful as Hades were there in this world? When these existences appear in front of him and become his enemy, would he still be able to turn misfortune into blessing? Ideas after ideas kept appearing in Noah's mind, making Noah finally realize the vastness of this world. Driven by such feelings, Noah murmured, "I have to become stronger." Noah had the idea of leaving this world. After all, if he wanted to become stronger, blindly training was no longer effective for the current Noah. Not to mention that Noah's achievements in magic had reached a bottleneck. If he continued to ponder, it would be better to travel to different worlds like before and find ways to strengthen himself. For example, the protozoan virus in the world of Black Bullet, the daybreak star pattern in the world of absolute dual blades, the magic of Night of the Magi, and so on. Although it wasn't much, it did allow Noah to grow considerably. Therefore, it was definitely feasible to go to other worlds to find ways to strengthen himself. Chapter 448. Leaving Fairy Tale and continuing to travel to other worlds, searching for world fragments while looking for ways to strengthen himself. This thought almost instantly occupied Noah's entire mind. Originally, Noah knew that he would sooner or later embark on a journey to other worlds, but he never thought it would be so soon. It had been less than a month since Noah had returned to Fairy Tale, and it was only recently that he had confirmed his relationship with Mira and Lisanna, as well as the marriage contract. Although Mira and Lisanna could understand Noah's decision and would not oppose Noah's departure, Noah really did not want to leave them so soon. Besides, the fairy tale also had the threat of the devil's heart. Hades had already announced in public that he would destroy Fairy Tale sooner or later. No one knew when this declaration would come true. Noah was worried that in the process of going to other worlds to train and travel, the fairy tale would be attacked by the grimoire heart. In that case, without Noah, Fairy Tale would really end up in a disastrous situation. After all, even Makarov had been suppressed by Hades. With the strength that Hades had shown, even if Kildas, Laxus, and Mishgang were to participate in the battle, as well as its rank Alusha and Mira, it would be difficult to defeat him. Apart from Noah, there was really no one in Fairy Tale who could suppress Hades. Perhaps, if Naz's potential was fully unleashed, it should be possible. Noah did not know why this thought appeared in his mind. Naz had unlimited possibilities. This was something that Noah had known for a long time. Therefore, at a critical moment, a fully unleashed Naz might really have a way to deal with Hades, right? However, this possibility was too baseless and could not be relied on at all. If he wanted to deal with Hades cleanly, then it was necessary to go to other worlds to find opportunities to become stronger. However, once he left this world, Noah could not be sure when Hades would bring the grimoire heart to Fairy Tale to cause trouble. In this way, the whole problem had reached a dead end. Of course, Fairy Tale still had that thing that Makarov had mentioned. Presumably, Hades would not be able to rashly cause trouble for Fairy Tale in the short term. However, what should he do if he slowly disintegrated the guild in secret like last time? Coupled with the fact that he could not bear to part with Mira and Lisanna, Noah fell into a dilemma. At this moment, Noah felt his heart suddenly skip a beat, as though it was reacting to something. There was an inexplicable feeling in his heart. What's going on? Noah was a little surprised as he clutched his heart, feeling that inexplicable feeling grow stronger and stronger. He could not help but feel a little anxious. After hesitating for a while, Noah seemed to have an epiphany and had such an idea. Let's go back to Between Worlds to take a look first. With that thought, Noah closed his eyes. In the next moment, without any warning, Noah, who was lying on the bed, inexplicably disappeared, causing the entire room to lose the aura of a living person. What entered his eyes was still pure white as always. Ding! In the light sound, pieces of intact or incomplete feathers floated back and forth in the pure white world. Like little birds, they happily gathered beside Noah, who had suddenly appeared and circled around him, as if they were welcoming Noah. Looking at these feathers, Noah felt as if he was looking at a spoiled child. His entire heart calmed down, and it was unbelievable. At this time, a voice appeared in Noah's mind. Can you hear my voice? Little Noah. When he heard this voice, Noah's first reaction was to jump in fright. So far, in between worlds, Noah had never heard a second voice other than himself, let alone a second person. Being able to enter between worlds was like Noah's privilege. At least, Noah had never seen a second person here. Now, with such a voice suddenly appearing, it would be strange if Noah was not scared. However, immediately after, a second voice also sounded in Noah's mind. Don't be surprised, other than you. No one can get rid of the world's shackles and enter between worlds through the world's barrier. Right now, we are only talking to you through the world's barrier. This was a very cold voice, and it was not an exaggeration to say that it was indifferent. The voice in front was slightly more cheerful, and it felt a little like a child's naivety. These two voices formed a sharp contrast in all aspects, causing Noah's memories to awaken. At this moment, Noah said with some surprise, "Is it Gaia and Alea?" Just as this sentence fell, the cheerful and naive voice from before sounded with strong dissatisfaction. "Not Gaia, it's mother." Hearing this sentence, Noah immediately confirmed that the owner of the voice was Gaia and Alea. Although we are now in different worlds, as the representatives of the worlds we still feel that you seem to be troubled, so we called out to you. Alea's calm voice echoed in Noah's mind. "Actually, we just want to tell you this. Do what you want to do. Do what I want to do." Noah was stunned. "Little Noah, you have to remember that you are an existence chosen by all the worlds. You are the darling of all the worlds," Gaia said seriously, which was rare for her. "You are helping the world, and the world will help you. Although the world can't directly bestow you power and use it in a world that already exists, at least the world won't cause you trouble when you are helping them. Pray," Alea said concisely. "Pray to the world, tell your troubles, and the world will respond to you." Hearing this, Noah's heart involuntarily throbbed, causing him to speak out the voice in his heart. "I am just worried that my departure will cause trouble for my lover and family." Undoubtedly, this was just a superficial statement, but Gaia and Alea seemed to have seen through all the thoughts in Noah's heart and understood the beginning of the whole thing. "What?" Gaia's voice sounded a little discouraged. "I sense the troubles in your heart across two worlds. I thought it was something very serious, but in the end it was just this?" Not to mention Gaia. Even Alea seemed to be in disbelief. This problem isn't that hard to solve. Noah was stunned at first, then he was delighted. "Is there a way to solve this problem? A world has a past, present, and future," Alea said. "However, in between worlds, there is no such thing as past, present, or future. Little Noah, the place where you are now is the place where all the worlds exist. When you entered between worlds, you were already outside the timeline. It is very similar to our situation in this world." Gaia continued Alea's words. "Then here is the problem. When you enter a world in between worlds where there is no timeline, little Noah, you must also enter the timeline of this world. Then, how did you determine the time of your arrival in this world?" Hearing Gaia's words, Noah was also suspicious. Using Gaia and Alea's words, a world has different time points, namely the past, present, and future. Since Noah existed in between worlds where there was no timeline, then when he entered a world, how did he determine the time of his arrival? Thinking about this, Noah immediately thought of a possibility. Chapter 449. There was no such thing as time in between worlds, but the worlds that truly existed lacked time. Without time, the world would have lost its foundation, and the result would be that the world itself would not be able to exist. Space and time. These were two essential elements of a world. The only exception to this was perhaps between worlds. But in between worlds where time did not exist, what did Noah use as a basis to determine the time of arrival? Noah had never considered this question before, but now that he thought about it, there was only one answer. The worlds that Noah arrived in, or rather the time that Noah arrived in, all had one thing in common: world fragments. Noah suddenly opened his mouth. "Every time I descend, there will always be the existence of world fragments." Although he did not know the reason, but some of the worlds in between worlds were destroyed, These destroyed worlds were all turned into fragments and were lost in the intact worlds. Naturally, when these world fragments were lost in the intact worlds, they were the same as Noah's situation and needed to enter the world's time axis. Then, if Noah arrived at a time when the world fragments were not present, then wouldn't he not be able to find the world fragments? Thus, if Noah wanted to find the world fragments, he could only arrive at a time when the world fragments were present. Correct answer. Gaia responded energetically. When little Noah chooses to arrive in a world, the world will automatically send you to a time when the world fragments are present. Although the world is not a dry world, it can faintly sense each other. Thus, when you encounter a clue to the world fragments, you will receive a hint from the world. Alea explained with a completely emotionless voice. It's the same principle as the last time when we could vaguely sense which parallel space the world fragment that exists in our world is in. Of course, the world will also know the time when the world fragment that is lost inside is located and send you there. This kind of teleportation is similar to an instinctive existence. It can be considered a function of the world itself. Just like how a lamp can emit light, when the switch is turned on, it will emit light. Little Noah, you are equivalent to that switch, Gaia said with a laugh. Therefore, little Noah, please answer this question. If the world fragments that were lost in a world were recovered by you, when you arrive in this world, what basis will the world use to choose the time when you arrive? This sentence was like a heavy hammer, waking up Noah and shaking Noah's spirit. You spend a total of 2 years in another world, and when you return to the world that gave birth to you, the time when you arrived was also 2 years later in that world. Alea said calmly. When the world fragments no longer exist in a world, and you did not choose the time when you arrived, then the world will let you arrive according to the time when you actually left. Did not choose the time. Noah keenly grasped the key words and became excited because of a guess. Are you saying that I can choose the time when I arrive? As previously said, the world will take the initiative to send you to the time when the world fragments exist. But if the world fragments do not exist, then the world can only send you to the time when you actually passed. Just like how you spent 2 years in the outside world and returned to your original world 2 years later. Gaia said with the tone of a little adult. However, little Noah, I also said that you are the darling of the world, and the world will not reject you. If the world fragments do not exist in a world, then as long as you make a request to the world when you arrive, the world will definitely respond to you. Alea told Noah the good news that he wanted to know the most. So, you don't have to worry about this. Just do what you want to do. Gaia and Alea's words made all the gloominess in Noah's heart disappear, and he was suddenly enlightened. If he could freely choose the time, then what was there to worry about? When it was time to return, wouldn't it be fine to directly descend to the time when Noah left? This way, Noah would not have to worry about Hades launching an attack when he was not around, nor would he have to worry about his departure affecting Mila and Lisanna. Everyone was happy. For the first time, Noah sincerely thanked the world. However, Gaia, who seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts, reminded him. However, little Noah, even if the world fragments do not exist in the world, you will not be able to arrive at the time when you left. As if a basin of cold water had been poured on his heart, Noah hurriedly asked. Why? Although you are a rather special existence that can freely leave space and time, passing through the world barrier, and entering the between worlds, it is also a fact that you truly exist in the world you once existed in. If you choose to leave the current time, then the world will need a period of time to buffer. During this period of time, you will not be able to arrive. Alea explained. This period of time is roughly equivalent to a month in each world. Even if you choose to arrive at the time when you left, the world will send you to a month after the time you chose. In other words, if Noah left the world of fairy tale, he would only be able to arrive a month after he left this world. Noah's heart finally settled. A month was not a long time at all. After all, in fairy tale, some of the more difficult missions would sometimes take several months to complete, and some of the S-rank missions and above would sometimes take several years to complete. If it was a month, Noah would only need to accept a more troublesome mission, and he would not even need to explain why he left. Mira and Lysana would also be able to wait for a month. As for Hades, if he chose to start an all-out war with Fairy Tail in a short month, then Noah would have no choice but to accept it. Little Noah, you must remember that you are the darling of the world. Gaia's voice was still as innocent as ever. Even if there is no way to directly help you, the world will choose to help you in all sorts of unorthodox areas. You have the support of many worlds behind you, so there is no need to fear anything. Do whatever you want to do, Alea said. The world will always be on your side. The words from Gaia and Alea made Noah's heart feel unprecedentedly steady. Sure enough, he still liked the world. When Noah returned to Fairy Tail once again, the sky was already bright. Undoubtedly, when he left it was still night, but when he returned, it was already bright. This phenomenon made Noah suspicious, and at the same time, he felt as if he had forgotten something important. With this suspicion, Noah did not choose to lie down and sleep, but instead went downstairs and returned to the guild. What Noah did not expect was that when he appeared, the members of the guild actually looked at him in disbelief. Big brother Noah, Lysana, who was originally serving drinks, threw down the tray in her hands and threw herself into Noah's embrace with 2 streams of tears. Not only Lysana, but even Mira, who was in a daze, ran out of the bar counter. In a state of panic, she almost fell down. She rushed to Noah's side and tightly grasped one of his arms. Tears almost flowed out of her eyes. Just as Noah fell into a daze, Elisha and the others rushed over aggressively. You bastard! Why did you disappear without a word? Gray fiercely punched Noah. Do you know how worried we were? You're exaggerating, aren't you? Noah said blankly. Didn't I just leave for a while? A while. Elisha glared at Noah. You disappeared for an entire month. Chapter 450. You disappeared for an entire month. Like a bolt from the blue, Noah came to a sudden realization. Only now did Noah realize that he had overlooked something important. Gaia and Alea had said that if Noah left the world he was in, then when he entered that world again, he would only be able to return to a month after he left. This didn't only refer to how long Noah had been in the other world. In Fairy Tail's world, only a month would have passed. This also meant that even if Noah had only left Fairy Tail's world for less than a second, a month would have passed here. That is to say, in the eyes of the people in the world of Fairy Tail, Noah had indeed inexplicably disappeared for a month. Realizing this, Noah almost broke out in cold sweat. He didn't think that there would be such a drawback. He had to be more careful next time. Big brother Noah, where did you run off to? Lysana shouted with a face full of grievance and anger. I've been worried this whole time. The group of Fairy Tail's companions also glared at Noah, especially Elisha, Naz, Gray, Lucy, Lebby, and the others. They all looked like they wanted to bite Noah, causing Noah to bitterly smile in his heart. Who knew that the result would be like this? Noah could only glance at Mira for help, but what he received was Myra's indignant expression, causing Noah's bitter smile to become even more intense. Even the gentle Mira was like this. It seemed that his 1-month absence had really worried everyone. Originally, Noah had wanted to come back and say goodbye before leaving. Otherwise, disappearing for a month without any reason would definitely cause his companions in Fairy Tail to worry. But now, it seemed that the result would be the same. Fortunately, it was only a month. Sorry, I really didn't expect it to take so long. At that moment, Noah could only give a half-truth explanation. After all, I was in a bit of a rush. When I left, I thought that I would be back in a while. In the end, it took so long. I apologize. I'm sorry. After saying that, Noah reached out and pulled both Mira and Lysana into his embrace, whispering softly to them, "Don't be angry, there won't be a next time." Hearing this, Mira and Lysana's hearts softened, and they no longer pursued the matter. Why did you suddenly leave for a month? Elisha asked the most important question on behalf of everyone. It wasn't just Mira and Lysana. Even the president was very worried. She thought that Hades had made a move on you. She almost led the entire Fairy Tail to look for Grimoire Heart to fight to the death. Undoubtedly, he had a great battle with Hades that day, and then disappeared inexplicably that night. Under such circumstances, it was inevitable that Makarov would have such thoughts. Noah was simply unable to speak of his bitterness. In the end, after hesitating for a while, he gave such an answer, as if he had given up on himself. If I said that my mother was looking for me, what would you all think? Mother. Everyone, including Mira and Lisanna, widened their eyes in shock. Mother? Noah's mother? But those who were familiar with Noah's background all knew that Noah was originally an orphan without parents. That was why he was adopted by Makarov. Where did his mother come from? As for those who were not familiar with Noah's background, they were even more confused. For a moment, they looked at each other. All of them lost the ability to speak. But to be precise, Noah wasn't lying. After all, even if Noah didn't admit it himself, Gaia and Aleya both claimed to be Noah's mother. Noah's words could be completely taken as the truth, or even the truth. Seeing that his companions in the guild were all in a state of confusion, Noah laughed dryly and sighed. Forget it, I was just joking. Don't take it seriously. Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and the rest looked at each other, but at the same time, they chose to keep quiet and not ask any more questions. Although they didn't know what had happened, Noah clearly had some difficulties that he couldn't speak of. It might even be related to his background. As companions, they couldn't just blindly ask it this time. Thus, even if they were confused, they didn't ask any more questions. It's good that Big Brother Noah is back. Lisanna quickly changed the topic in an attempt to change the atmosphere. It's good that you're fine, right? Are you hungry? A gentle expression appeared on Myra's face again. She even reached out and wiped the sweat off Noah's forehead with her soft and slender hands. Shall I make you something to eat? Actually, Noah wasn't hungry. He was just a little sleepy. When he left this world, it was at night. At that time, Noah didn't feel sleepy at all because of all sorts of things. But now that the matter had been resolved, the drowsiness and everything else had instantly returned. However, it wouldn't be good for him to go back to his room to sleep. Noah could only nod. Then eat a little. Mira smiled in satisfaction and returned to the bar. Big Brother Noah, Lisanna said angrily. Don't disappear for no reason in the future, okay? Really? You should have at least said goodbye before leaving. Gray shook his head. You didn't even tell Mira and Lisanna before disappearing. If it weren't for our confidence in your strength, we would have suspected that something had happened to you. Let's report to the president later. Even Alusha complained, which was rare. Other than Mira and Lisanna, the president is the one who's most worried about you. If there's anything we can help with, just let us know. Lucy patted her extremely full chest. Although Noah is very strong, there must be something we can help with. I haven't learned all the runes yet. Levi suddenly smiled. So you can't have anything happen to you. I won't feel good if you disappear before the outcome of the battle is decided. Naz grinned and laughed. Don't forget our agreement, Noah. Love. Even hubby raised his hand. We're all companions, don't be polite. You're my brother-in-law. If something happens to you, my sister and Lisanna will definitely be sad. A man who makes a woman sad is not a man. Elfman said loudly. If that's the case, even a man won't forgive you. Well, let's drink together when we're free. Kana winked at Noah. With her mature appearance doing this, it was as if she was flirting. Sister, I'll definitely teach you how to drink. Listening to the different contents from each of his companions, but the concern in their words was exactly the same. Noah could not help but reveal a smile. It seemed that he didn't just like the world, but also some of the people in the world. Fairy tale. His home. In order to protect his home, Noah had to become stronger. Since the devil's heart intended to destroy Fairy Tale, then it didn't matter if Hades was the former second-generation leader of Fairy Tale. Since he was the enemy of Fairy Tale, the method to deal with Fairy Tale was already clear. Perhaps there was no way now, but in the future, Noah would go to various worlds and search for world fragments while looking for ways to strengthen himself and make himself stronger. When he returned again, only a month would have passed in this world. However, at that time, Noah would have been reborn once again and couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Just like what Gaia and Alea had said, behind Noah stood various worlds. The worlds would always stand on Noah's side. With this cheating method that only a month would have passed when he returned, no matter how long he spent in other worlds, Noah couldn't not become stronger even if he wanted to. If Hades knew all this, he would definitely regret making Noah an enemy. After all, the two of them weren't on the same starting line from the beginning. Looking at the familiar faces and the warm and noisy atmosphere in the guild, Noah shook his hand. Just wait. Chapter 451. Hua. The extremely loud sound of waves mixed with the faint cry of seagulls could be heard constantly reverberating on the golden beach under the setting sun, giving people a very dreamy feeling. This was the first scene that Noah saw when he opened his eyes after leaving the world of fairy tale and chose to enter another world. Perhaps because it was dusk, there were not many people on the dreamy beach. There were only a few young men in swimsuits who were immersed in the beautiful beach world. Noah looked around and observed a group of people who were playing beach volleyball not far from him. It was a group of young men who looked like they were not from the East. Not only them, but the people on the beach were basically like this. One look, and you could tell that they were not from the East. It seems that this is not China or Japan. Noah made a rough judgment. Well, it's also possible that it's a completely unrelated place. So far, the worlds that Noah had been to were Fairy Tale, Black Bullet, Absolute Dual Blades, and Night of the Magician. Among them, the Black Bullet, Absolute Dual Blades, and the Night of the Magicians all had their own differences, but without exception, they were all set in the modern world. The only exception was Fairy Tale. Therefore, Noah felt that if the world he had arrived in was set in the modern world, then the place he was now in was most likely a foreign country. Otherwise, it would be like the world of Fairy Tale, which was not set in the modern world. I hope it's the former. In the world of Black Bullet, Noah used a short 1 year to learn all the languages in the world, so that he would not run into a wall in other worlds because of language problems. If the world he was in now was also set in the modern world, then even if he came to a foreign country, Noah would not have to worry about the language barrier. On the contrary, Noah might encounter a language barrier and would have to worry about it for a long time. Anyway, let's find someone to ask first. With this thought in mind, Noah quickly caught a passerby. Can I ask you something? First of all, Noah used English. After all, the 3 modern worlds that he had descended upon in the past basically used English as the international language. Even during diplomacy, English was more often used. Therefore, since the place they landed in was similar to a foreign country, then if this world was also set in modern times, it would be more possible to communicate in English. However, the young man who was caught by Noah scratched his head in distress and uttered a sentence in his mind. Are they foreign tourists? Hearing this sentence, Noah's heart immediately relaxed. Although it wasn't English, it was Italian. Noah had learned all the languages of the modern world. Naturally, Italian was one of them. At that moment, Noah switched to Italian and spoke fluently to the young man. I'm sorry, I am indeed a foreign tourist, but I'm lost now. Can I ask you something? Hearing Noah use extremely fluent Italian, the young man was surprised, but at the same time, his expression couldn't help but show a trace of relief. If there was a language barrier, it was indeed very difficult to communicate. This was true for both parties who needed to communicate. If it were a more indifferent person, he would wave his hand and drive people away when he encountered a person who didn't speak the language barrier, or simply leave the person behind. But this young man didn't seem to be that kind of person, and he was quite enthusiastic. So Noah got the information he needed through some inquiries. As Noah thought, this world was set in the modern world, but it was not China or Japan, but Italy. Noah more or less guessed this from the young man using Italian. Noah was now at the southern end of Italy, a resort island floating on the Mediterranean Sea, Sardinia. This was a resort island with a population of only about 10,000 people. It was surrounded by clear seawater, and the surrounding natural environment was also very beautiful. Naturally, the biggest industry of such a resort island was sightseeing. Whenever summer came, Sardinia would be flooded with tourists with the purpose of going to Europe for vacation, especially the coast in the northeast, which was a special resort for noble people. Sardinia and the surrounding islands formed the autonomous prefecture of Sardinia, and the capital, Cagliari, was a port in the south of the island. Now Noah was on the beach not far from Cagliari. In addition, he used English at the beginning, so the young man thought that Noah was a foreign tourist. After getting the information that he wanted, Noah expressed his gratitude to the young man, who had accompanied him for a long time. In return, he received a smile from the young man that was definitely not a hypocritical one. After bidding farewell to each other, Noah saw the young man off. It's said that Italians are more enthusiastic. I thought only women were like this, but I didn't expect men to be the same. I just don't know if they are bold or not. With this sentence as an inspiration, Noah raised his head and looked at the road to Cagliari that the young man pointed out to him. I just don't know if this world is as ordinary as it looks on the surface. In the world of the Dark Bullet, there were cursed children, protogut animals, and even new human creation project mechanical soldiers like Rentaro and Leech Kajian. In the world of Absolute Dual Blade, there were surpassers, Godslayer, and other individuals with power beyond human beings. As for the Night of Sorcerers, in addition to magicians, there were all kinds of other existences. It was not as peaceful as it looked on the surface. Was this world the same? This was Noah's question. However, if this was the case, it was more in line with Noah's intentions. After all, in addition to looking for world fragments, Noah also had to find a way to strengthen himself. If this was an ordinary world, then Noah would not be able to achieve his second goal. In any case, it's getting dark. Let's go to the city and find a hotel to rest first. Because of Gaia and Alea's call, Noah left the world of fairy tale and went to Between Worlds. As a result, when he returned, he mysteriously disappeared for a month. After that, Noah accompanied his two fiancées, Mira and Lisanna, for a whole week. After a week, he used work as an excuse to accept a mission that would take a long time. He did his best to solve it in 3 days before returning to this world. This way, when Noah returned to the world of fairy tale, even if a month had passed, Noah could use the excuse of it took more time than expected as an excuse. When he left the world of fairy tale, it was already night time, and Noah was already a little sleepy. As for the problem of identity, well, let's talk about it tomorrow. Leaving this sentence, Noah walked in the direction of the city. At this time, Noah did not know. In a cold drink shop that sold ice cream in the distance, a handsome blonde man wearing a shirt and shorts, holding a cup of ice cream in his hand, who looked like he was on vacation, was gazing at Noah's back that was gradually disappearing into the distance with sparkling eyes that almost made people wonder if they would shine. Beside him, a man wearing glasses was looking at the blonde man with an expression of disgust and disgust. However, when he saw the blonde man's expression, he immediately frowned and said in a strange tone that could not be said to be respectful or rude, "What's wrong?" "Nothing," the blonde man casually replied and walked in the direction he was looking at. "You idiot." The man wearing glasses hurriedly chased after him and swallowed the last word he wanted to say with difficulty. "What do you want now?" Hearing this, the blonde man laughed heartily. "Nothing. I just saw an interesting person and wanted to say hello." Chapter 452. Noah arrived at Cagliari smoothly and entered the crowded streets. Since this world was set in the modern world, then if he walked along the main road, he would at least meet people in the end, so he would not be completely lost. In addition, Noah also met some passers-by on the way. Under the enthusiastic guidance of the other party, it was naturally impossible for him to not find the city. Undoubtedly, even if it was the capital of Sardinia, Cagliari was just a port. It was not that big, but surprisingly, there were many people here, and even many foreigners. That was natural. After all, this was a holiday island. Amidst the noise on the streets, Noah kept walking towards the city center. However, before he could walk far, Noah's footsteps came to a halt. In Noah's superb perception ability, Noah clearly felt an extremely unusual aura. It was the aura of a person. Moreover, it was very obvious that it was not the aura of an ordinary person, because an ordinary person could not have such an aura that was like an unsheathed sword, extremely sharp, and made Noah's heart tighten. That was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the owner of this aura seemed to be coming in the direction of Noah, and he even extended his hand to Noah. If the other party wanted to harm Noah, then Noah would instantly feel the existence of killing intent, hostility, or malice, but Noah did not feel any of that. Therefore, the other party's hand that was extended towards Noah should be intending to put his hand on Noah's shoulder, right? However, because the other party's aura was too unusual, even if there was no killing intent, malice, or hostility, Noah still stopped in his tracks, and his body dodged like a reflex launch. The person who was about to put his hand on Noah's shoulder missed. Oh! The other party didn't seem to have expected Noah to dodge all of a sudden, or rather, he didn't expect Noah to notice his approach and avoid his attack with extreme sensitivity. He revealed a surprised expression, but soon, that surprised expression turned into one of interest. Only then did Noah use the momentum of dodging to turn around and look behind him, taking in the full view of the person behind him. What he saw was a young man with blonde hair. He was about 20 years old, only 5 years older than Noah. The young man was carrying a long box on his shoulder. The shape of the box looked like it was used to hold a baseball bat or a bamboo sword. Intuition told Noah that the thing in the box could not be ignored. Driven by such intuition, Noah immediately stared at the box on one side of the young man's shoulder and did not move his gaze away. Did you notice it too? The young man's surprised expression appeared again, and it was much more intense than before. But in the next second, it turned into an even more interested expression. Like me, did you notice the sword on me too? Sword. The word stunned Noah for a moment. Sword. Could it be that the box on the young man's shoulder contained a sword? If that was the case, then Noah could be sure of it. First of all, the person in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. Would an ordinary person carry a sword? Secondly, this world was definitely not as peaceful as it seemed. Otherwise, a random person with a sword would not have come to Noah like this. This made Noah frown slightly, and he looked straight at the young man with a bright smile. Who are you? Speaking of which, I haven't introduced myself yet. But that's too troublesome. You can just call me Tony. The young man said so. Your name? Forget it, that kind of thing is not important. For a moment, Noah really wanted to yell at the young man's face. That kind of thing is not important. But in the end he resisted the urge. The young man in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. Because an ordinary person would not say something so stupid. Since my name is not important, why are you looking for me? Noah glanced at Tony. Or are you just asking for directions? No. Didn't I just say that I noticed your sword? Tony laughed, but there was no smile in his eyes, only a glint that made Noah's heart skip a beat. Although it's a little strange to say this, I'm a person who is obsessed with swords. I can feel that you have a sword that cannot be ignored, and my intuition tells me that a fight with you would be very interesting. The words of the young man in front of him were a little inexplicable, but Noah was still able to understand the last sentence he said. Noah couldn't help but smile, but there was no emotion in his smile at all. In other words, you're here to pick a fight, right? How about a fight with me? Ignoring Noah's words and Noah's dangerous expression, Tony spoke as if there was no one around. Although I don't feel the aura of my kind from you, this is the first time I've met someone who can make me excited in an instant. Obviously, even those great knights and holy knights who have practiced swordsmanship for dozens, or even hundreds of years, can't give me this kind of feeling. You, an ordinary person, can actually do it. This really makes me very interested. Not to mention, you also have the aura of a sword that is inconceivable enough to be on par with mine. Tony's lips curled up as he finished speaking. His expression was like that of a brave warrior who was about to enter the battlefield and immersed in the battle with the enemy. How about it? Do you want to have a fight with me? At this moment, all the sounds in the surroundings seemed to have left Noah and Tony. The two of them stared at each other with a gaze that could make ordinary people faint. Noah didn't know what a grand knight, holy knight, or my kind meant. However, Noah felt that the sword Tony was referring to wasn't an actual sword, but Noah's swordsmanship. In other words, Tony felt that Noah's swordsmanship wasn't inferior to his, which was why he came looking for him. To be honest, Noah was almost the same as Tony. He could feel Tony's extraordinary sword skill attainments. However, at the same time, Noah felt that there was an even more terrifying power in Tony's body. That kind of power was no weaker than the feeling Noah got from Hades's eye that was covered by the blindfold. Not only was Tony not a simple character, but he was also very likely a very terrifying character. Noah realized this. However, even if Tony was a character who could rival Hades, Noah wouldn't be afraid of him. In fact, Noah was interested in meeting such an unfathomable character as soon as he arrived in this world. Perhaps he could obtain some important information about this world from this person. Noah was about to say something when an exasperated voice sounded from behind Tony. Salvatore Doni, what trouble are you trying to stir up this time? Following such an exasperated voice, a bespectacled man squeezed through the crowd and ran over here. His face was full of anger and anxiety, just like a beast tamer who had just released a lion. His appearance could be described as anxious to the point of jumping up and down. When this person appeared, Tony's expression crumbled. He had an obvious "oh no, I forgot about this guy" expression. Yo, Andre, my friend. Long time no see. Compared to long time no see, I'd rather never see you again, you idiot. You were the one who shook me off just now, right? Andre yelled at Donnie in a tired and furious tone. I understand, Salvatore Tony. As long as you're out of my sight, you'll do something that will plunge the entire world into chaos. How can you be called a king? Hey Andre, calm down first. Look at the sky, look at the sunset. Look at this beautiful city. Don't you feel happy? Tony smiled brightly. I'm sure you can understand my feelings. I can't help but want to find someone to fight when I see this. I don't understand. Andre was going crazy. Speaking of which, why does this have anything to do with fighting? Looking at the two of them, Noah fell into a state of speechlessness. What's wrong with this world? Chapter 453. Andre, my friend, I think you should have a glass of beer and think about what I'm saying. There's no need to think about what you're saying. Anyway, it's going to lead to big trouble. Even if you tell me that you're getting married, I'll believe that you're not making a lifelong vow with your other half. Instead, you're going to fight another time, right? How? How is that possible? Before you say that, please look into my eyes. Don't look away. Perhaps Tony and Andre didn't notice that the pedestrians around them had more or less distanced themselves from them, and were whispering to each other while pointing at them. Noah's interest in Tony vanished as he looked at the two men who seemed to be having a crosstalk. He turned to Andre as though he was discouraged. Noah sensed a familiar power from Andre. Mana. It's a powerful mana that's comparable to a luscious. It's been less than an hour since I came to this world. First, there's an unfathomable man who popped out of nowhere. Now there's an existence that's comparable to a luscious? Could it be that this world is filled with such existences? Noah couldn't figure it out. Seeing that Tony and Andre weren't going to stop arguing, he gave up on getting any information from them. Instead of being entangled with these two inexplicable people, it was better to hurry up and leave, so as to avoid any unnecessary trouble. This thought formed in Noah's mind. This meant that if he continued to stay with them, it would definitely lead to trouble. Noah instinctively felt that he had to leave. At that moment, Noah turned around and began to run without hesitation. Hey, wait. Tony, who was quarreling with Andre, noticed Noah running away. His eyes widened as he hurriedly chased after him. You haven't decided if you want to fight with me. What? You want to fight with an ordinary person? Andre's face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. I thought that you would only bring trouble to the people around you when you're causing trouble. At least, you wouldn't challenge them to a duel. Now I know that I was wrong about you. Don't run, you idiot. Andre was on the verge of tears as he chased after Road in exhaustion. The three men chased each other in a straight line. They were like cats on the crowded street, nimbly squeezing through the gaps in the sea of people. They whizzed through the crowd at a speed not inferior to an off-road bicycle at full speed. This scene shocked Andre, who was at the back of the group. Andre didn't doubt that Tony was capable of that. However, that young man was capable as well. Could it be that he's not an ordinary person, but a knight or a magician? Andre pondered. That's not right. How could the other party be just an ordinary knight or magician, if he could make that idiot go through all this trouble? Could it be that he is also a king? Andre's expression immediately became interesting. Instead of saying that it was rosy, it was more accurate to say that it was deathly pale or deathly green. Not good. Let the two kings fight here. We're in big trouble. Andre finally got serious, mana slowly gushing out of his body. At this time, Andre was using a power called magic. It was unknown what kind of magic he used to enhance his speed, but Andre's speed suddenly increased. His figure flashed left and right like the wind as he passed through the crowd and chased after the two in front of him. Compared to Andre, Tony was anxious. Tony's outstanding eyesight prevented him from letting Noah out of his sight. Besides, Noah's astonishing speed and agility allowed him to pass through the crowd and enter the alley. How could Tony not be anxious? I won't let you escape. Oh hi. With such a roar, Tony actually leaped higher than the sea of people and stepped on the head of the person in front of him, without any hesitation as he leaped forward. In an instant, blood-curdling screams sounded one after another. Those were the screams of the people who were trampled to the ground by Tony's feet. It was apparent that Tony didn't have any skills to divert his strength. Or rather, he didn't even consider the people he stepped on. He only cared about his own goal. He laughed heartily as he leaped forward like a child crossing a river by stepping on a stone pier. Noah, who happened to turn around and saw this scene, almost jumped in fright. There's actually such an idiot in this world? Andre, who was running at the back, roared with grief and indignation when he saw Tony jumping forward by stepping on people's heads like a monkey, and those who were lying on the ground screaming miserably under his feet, causing the entire street to be in chaos. You idiot! This was simply a walking, humanoid troublemaker. When Noah realized this, he dashed into an alley like a madman. However, at this moment Tony, who was stepping on the head of the wailing man, also jumped into the alley. Tony stomped on the walls on both sides of the alley. His body turned into a blur as he leaped over Noah's head and landed in front of him. Haha, you can't escape. In response to Tony's maniacal laughter, Noah only replied with a single sentence. Too naive. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah sped up. Tony, who had not yet landed on the ground, was stunned. Noah spun around and kicked Tony's lower abdomen fiercely. Bang! Amidst the muffled sound, Noah did not kick Tony's lower abdomen. Instead, it was the box that had fallen into Tony's hands and was held in front of his abdomen. Tony, who was holding the box and blocking Noah's kick, was sent flying backward by Noah's force. At the same time, an excited expression appeared on his face. You're finally going to fight me? As he spoke, Tony raised his eyes and looked ahead. He was immediately stunned. Noah was nowhere to be seen. Tony hurriedly raised his head and looked up. Just like Tony, Noah stepped on the left and right sides of the alley wall and leaped up agilely. Not long after, he jumped onto the roof of the nearby building and disappeared. Tony's expression changed at first, but then a sinister smile appeared on his face. That was a sign that his fighting spirit had been completely aroused. Interesting. Leaving these words behind, Tony also jumped up onto the roof and chased after him. At this moment, Andre finally caught up. He was just in time to see Tony jumping onto the roof of the building with a twisted expression on his face. You just stepped on someone. Now you're stepping on someone else's roof. You trash should be arrested for trespassing. While shouting, Andre also used a magic spell called Leap. His body soared into the sky, and with a single leap, He landed on the roof of the building. If Tony heard Andre's words, he would cry out that he was wronged. Stepping on people was his fault, but jumping onto other people's roofs was Noah's idea. Whoosh! Amidst the whistling of the wind, Noah's figure flashed through the space. He jumped down from a building, jumped onto a magnificent building, and landed on the roof of the building. This was a cathedral on Sardinia. At this time, Noah was on the roof of such a large church. At the same time, a frivolous voice sounded in front of Noah. "It's time to give up running, right, friend?" The one who said this was Donnie, who had also landed on the roof of the church. "Aya, I thought you would be tired after jumping and running for so long. I didn't expect you to not even pant. You're much stronger than those knights. Undoubtedly, you didn't use magic." Tony chuckled as he carried the box on his shoulder. "But then again, you are indeed worthy of having the same sword as me. If you want to wield a powerful sword, you also need a strong physique. It seems that you have a good understanding of this point. Are you praising yourself?" Noah looked at Tony, who was not panting at all. "Undoubtedly, aren't you the same?" "Yes, it's the same." Tony laughed happily. "We really have a lot in common." Chapter 454. When Andre reached the roof of the cathedral, Tony was already holding the box in his hand. He opened the box and took out the sheathed sword. It was a standard knight's sword. The blade was more than 80 centimeters long. It had a double-edged blade and a thick and sturdy structure. However, it wasn't a powerful weapon. It wasn't a divine weapon or magic weapon. It was just an ordinary knight's sword that could be easily identified as a crude mass-produced weapon. Of course, the sword itself was rather ordinary, but the person holding it was definitely not ordinary. When Tony pulled out the sword from the scabbard and held it in his hand, Noah felt an inexplicable sense of danger. It was as if he was warning Noah not to let the other party have a sword in his hand, otherwise, something terrible would happen. Moreover, Tony didn't hold the sword in his hand. Instead, he lowered his hand as though he didn't have the strength to lift the sword. He didn't seem like he was going to attack or defend. He looked like a child holding a toy. Noah's expression gradually turned serious as he stared straight at Tony, who still had a sunny smile on his face, but his eyes had turned into a ferocious beast staring at its prey. After a while, Noah let out a sigh. "It seems like you won't let me go if I don't fight with you." "Don't say that. Isn't it a great thing for two people who have the same sword to fight each other?" Tony's expression remained unchanged, but his eyes were terrifying. "Other than my own kind and enemy, this is the first time I feel like I have to swing my sword at someone with all my might. So please don't disappoint me." Hearing Tony's words, Andre, who was frozen due to the vile atmosphere, finally reacted. His mouth gaped open in astonishment as he looked at Noah in a completely different way. Unlike Noah, Andre clearly understood the weight of the words kindred and enemies that Tony mentioned. He also understood the weight of Tony's words. Frankly speaking, with Tony's words, all the magicians in the world would know about Noah's existence by this time tomorrow. Noah would definitely be more famous than many knights and magicians who had the highest honor in the world. This was the significance of Tony's words. Andre thought that Tony was chasing after his own kind. However, he didn't know Noah at all, and was certain that he wasn't Tony's own kind. Besides, Tony also said that Noah wasn't his own kind and enemy. So was he just an ordinary knight or magician? If that was the case, then Noah was definitely an existence equivalent to those at the highest level in the entire world of magic, to make Salbardoni feel the need to wield his sword with all his might. Andre was on the same level as Tony. However, even Andre couldn't make Tony swing his sword at full strength. This was enough to prove the extent of Noah's power. Andre, who wanted to stop Tony at first, gave up. That was not only because he knew that Noah was not a simple person, but also because once Tony pulled out his sword, Andre would definitely be knocked down by Tony's sword if he wanted Tony to pull back his sword. Instead of standing in front of that idiot, I should think about how to clean up the mess, Andre said as if he had given up on himself. Then, using the magic of leap, he leaped away and landed on a building in the distance. He then took out his phone. All right, friend. It's your turn to draw your sword. Tony waved his empty hand calmly. Let me see your sword and sword. Sigh. Noah sighed impatiently. That's all I can do. Noah didn't think that he would have to fight someone whose strength he couldn't see through after coming to a new world. However, it was also a good opportunity to test the strength of the people in this world. Bang! Like an explosion, the flames in Noah's hand suddenly ignited and turned into a black knight's sword that fell into Noah's hand. Compared to Tony's sword that looked like it was mass-produced and could be forged by a normal person, Noah's knight's sword was as black gold. There were white lines on the sword with mysterious runes on it. It was obvious that it wasn't an ordinary sword. Oh! Tony raised an eyebrow. Is this your sword? There's no need to fight if I answer your question. You don't look like you have such thoughts, do you? Noah raised the knight's sword in his hand and pointed it at Tony. Since you want me to take out my sword, I'll accompany you this time. If you don't make me happy, I'll stab you with this thing you want to see. Ha 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 ha. Tony laughed heartily as a mountain-like pressure spread out from his body. That's right. That's how it should be. The moment the words left his mouth, Tony lifted his feet and slowly walked towards Noah. Like a run-up, he quickened his pace bit by bit. At a certain moment, he suddenly stomped his feet on the ground and shot forward. The knight's sword in his hand was aimed at Noah, slashing down furiously. Whang! Just as Tony slashed out with his sword, Noah's vision blurred. It was as if the sword had suddenly disappeared. He could only feel a sharp wind breaking chi in front of him, which made Noah's eyes narrow. Tony was indeed not an ordinary person. He didn't use magic or any other power. He just swung his sword. It was a pure physical attack, but it had the same effect as magic. His sword disappeared. It was not because of any magic, but because Tony had followed a perfect trajectory and slashed at Noah's blind spot, which should not have been possible from the front. However, with his excellent senses, Noah was still able to perceive the trajectory of the sword. Noah leaned his body slightly and quickly retreated. Swish! Tony's sword suddenly appeared and slashed at Noah's original position. Duh! After dodging Tony's outstanding strike, Noah immediately stepped forward and chopped down on Tony's head with the knight's sword in his right hand. Tony was not surprised by the energy coming from above his head. He raised his sword and slashed at the top of his head. Clang! The white knight's sword clashed with the black knight's sword, causing sparks to fly in all directions. The crisp sound of clashing resounded. Noah and Tony were both pushed back by each other's strength. However, they only took half a step back before they were able to stabilize themselves. Gently rubbing his palms on his sword, Tony let out a low roar in excitement. He stomped his feet on the ground and shot towards Noah. The sword in his hand trembled slightly. With a wave of his hand, a phantom appeared out of thin air like a mirage. The sword tip turned into a white shadow as Tony's sword stabbed towards Noah's neck from a tricky and vicious angle. There was no mercy at all. After the previous probing, Tony had already probed Noah's sword skill attainments. Therefore, there was no need to be merciful. Facing the sharp tip of the sword, Noah took a step back and raised the knight's sword in his hand to block in front of him. Swish! The cunning knight's sword tore through the air and pierced through the air like a bolt of lightning with a sharp sound. Clang! The pitch-black knight's sword appeared in front of the sharp tip of the sword, as if it could predict the future, causing sparks to fly from the tip of the sword as it landed on the tip. Clang! 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 All of a sudden, the mirage-like swords landed on Noah's swords one after another. One attacked crazily, while the other retreated conservatively. The two swords, one white and one black, clashed with each other. As Noah and Tony moved, sparks and crisp sounds filled the air with every clash. Sure enough, my feeling was right. Tony became more and more excited as the fight went on. Even those uncles who have been practicing swordsmanship for 30 years and call themselves knights were killed by my one strike. You can actually block so many of my strikes. I was not wrong. You have a very powerful sword. Let me see how powerful your sword is. Chapter 455. Clang! The crisp sounds of steel clashing against steel, and the sparks that flew in all directions continuously reverberated through the roof of the great sage hall. The darkening space seemed to have been dyed bright as waves of red light flashed one after another. Chi! The tip of the sword that was pointed at the pitch-black knight's sword suddenly trembled slightly and swayed abruptly. It bypassed the knight's sword and shot towards Noah's neck. Looking at the sharp tip of the sword, Noah's figure retreated without hesitation. Amidst the clattering sounds, the tip of his feet constantly tapped on the ground. Every time he tapped on the ground, his body would fly back a certain distance in an extremely agile manner. Ha! Seeing Noah's sudden retreat, Tony let out a low roar and stomped his foot on the ground with a force much more violent than Noah's. Like a leaf in a gale, there seemed to be an invisible force pushing Tony out from behind. Tony quickly dashed towards Noah. Looking at Tony, who was hot on his heels, Noah narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have thought of something, and the corners of his mouth slowly rose. Tony, who clearly sensed the curled expression on Noah's face, instantly felt a warning in his heart. This caused Tony, who was shooting out, to suddenly stomp on the ground and forcefully stop his body in the most violent manner. However, stopping now would have given Noah too much time. Without warning, Noah suddenly leaped up and spun his body. Like a bullet that was about to be fired at Tony, his body was actually suspended in the air in the shape of the letter 1. A gorgeous vortex suddenly appeared under Noah's foot and covered the bottom of Noah's foot. Bang! With a loud explosion, the vortex under Noah's feet suddenly burst open, turning into an extremely ferocious thrust that propelled Noah's body forward like a bullet in the truest sense. Originally, the Great Leap technique was no longer of much help to Noah. Noah already had the idea of eliminating it. However, at this time, Noah didn't rely on the Great Leap to increase his speed. Instead, he relied on the Great Leap function that allowed Noah to use space as a stepping board. Sometimes, the effects of this ability would be extraordinary, and it was comparable to Andre's leap magic. Therefore, Noah chose to use the Great Leap as a surprise attack. Whoosh! Under Tony's shocked gaze, Noah, who was in midair, used the leap forward technique to shoot out like a bullet. He rotated the knight's sword in his hand for half a circle, and after he completely borrowed the force, he slammed it down on Tony with a fierce chi force. Is there such a way to fight? The ferocious energy coming from above made Tony yell, but he didn't dare to be careless at all. He turned the knight's sword in his hand and stirred up a faint whirlwind, as if it was tearing the air apart. After a slight pause, with a piercing sound of wind breaking, he heavily tapped on the knight's sword that was coming at him. Ding! The loud sound of metal colliding rang out for a long time. Clang! Soon, another crisp sound of collision reverberated in the air. It was the sound of Noah's Great Leap strike on Tony's hastily raised knight's sword. Under such circumstances, coupled with the effect of the surprise attack, Tony more or less panicked and lost his balance from the heavy strike. Not good. Tony's expression changed as he tried to stabilize himself. Too slow. But Noah wouldn't let go of this opportunity. He spun his knight's sword and slammed it heavily on Tony's chest. Bang! A muffled sound suddenly rang out. Goo! Tony spat out a bitter groan. His body seemed to have been hit by a truck. The friction caused by the friction in the air caused him to fly backward and smash into the guardrail-like wall not far away. Bang! The powerful force caused Tony to smash through the wall, and he fell out of the roof of the great cathedral amidst the flying rubble, falling below the great cathedral. Shit! Noah came to his senses and cursed inwardly. I forgot to restrain my strength. The great cathedral wasn't small, and its height naturally couldn't be underestimated. Although it was not comparable to a skyscraper, it was still possible for a human body to fall from. Unless Tony used magic or something like that, he would definitely be severely injured if he were to bear the impact with his physical body. No matter how strong his body was, he would definitely be severely injured. If his head fell down, Tony's fate would be tragic. Of course, Noah didn't think that Tony would fall to his death. Just as Noah was hesitating whether to go over and take a look, a hand suddenly reached out from below the smashed wall and placed on the ground. Then a person climbed up from below. Wah, I thought I was dead for sure. With such a nonchalant cry, Tony climbed up in an extremely wretched manner, like he was not a human at all. Seeing this extremely mundane scene, Noah fell into a state of speechlessness. Noah had imagined that Tony would use some kind of magic to suddenly fly up from below. He also thought that Tony would directly appear in front of him like teleportation. However, Noah really didn't expect that Tony would actually climb up. What should he say? Noah began to suspect that Tony was really hiding his strength. Under Noah's scrutinizing gaze, Tony patted the dust on his body and raised his head. He looked at Noah with the same sunny expression as before, but the look in his eyes had completely changed. He became impassioned. This was Tony's performance when he truly began to value Noah. I didn't think that I would lose in a duel of swords. Undoubtedly, even the hierarch can't do anything to me in this aspect. You're really satisfying. Tony's eyes met Noah's scrutinizing gaze. His expression more or less revealed the battle thirst of a pure warrior. What's your name? Although Tony had been pestering Noah to duel with him, he had never asked for Noah's name. The reason was simple. Back then, Noah hadn't shown that he was worthy enough for Tony to remember his name. But now, Tony was asking for his name. It was impossible for Noah not to understand what this meant. Noah Doria. You can call me Noah. Noah, huh? Tony muttered before nodding. Okay, I'll remember your name. Noah certainly didn't know how difficult it was for Tony to remember a person's name. To put it bluntly, there were no more than 10 people who could make Tony remember the name of their first meeting. And each of these 10 people was an existence that possessed unparalleled power in this world. I'll admit it. I lost in a duel of swords. Tony stared at Noah and said, but I can still use a sword that no one in this world can block. A sword that no one in this world can block. Noah's heart tightened. These words were definitely not just empty words. Originally, I didn't want to use such a sword because it can't be considered as my sword skill. It's just an opportunistic strength. But since I lost in a duel of swords, it would be rude if I don't show you my true strength. Tony lowered his hand that was holding the sword. I'll show you something special. My authority. When these words entered Noah's ears, Noah's heart let out an unprecedented cry. It was a sense of crisis. A real sense of crisis. Although he didn't know what Tony meant by authority, Noah believed him for no reason. It was definitely something very dangerous. Something so dangerous that it could take Noah's life. This made Noah's body tense up. His heart was in his mouth. At this moment, Tony suddenly opened his mouth and chanted an incantation. I hereby swear that I won't allow anything that I can't cut to exist. This sword can cut through everything on earth. It is an invincible blade. An unimaginable amount of power gushed out from Tony's body and turned into a fluorescent light that covered Tony's entire body. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.